Hi guys, this is Hirosaki. This story is all about what if Naruto uncovers his true potential. One discussion in the academy introduces Naruto to his first real friends and changes his life forever. Together, they will work hard, push each other, and unlock their true potential. Before we start, kindly like and subscribe to this channel, and look over the description box for the author of this amazing storyline. Welcome aboard. Chapter 25, Burning Minds and Burning Will. Naruto-kun. Congratulations! Almost immediately after arriving in the waiting room, Naruto was greeted by Hinata. The girl rushed over to him and gave him a hug with enough force that she nearly knocked him over. The blonde's eyes widened in response before he returned to the hug. Thanks Hinata-chan. Naruto smiled. He then started to wince a little as the Hyuga tightened the hug. Hinata, you are kinda hugging a little tight. Hinata quickly let go of the boy, a blush on her face. Sorry. Nah, don't apologize. The blonde chuckled. I didn't know you could shout that loud. I could hear your cheering all the way down there in the arena. Hinata's blush seemed to brighten in color, but a smile also graced her lips. Well, what can I say? You fought amazingly. Fought like a true tactician. Shikamaru commented with a smirk as he walked over to greet his friend. I don't think I've ever seen you fight like that. Naruto then turned his attention to Shikamaru. The two proceeded to high-five each other. Hey, I learned a few things over the month break. And there's more where that came from. The blonde informed him. I'd hope. It means our match will be a lot more fun. Karatsuchi exclaimed as she walked over to the members of Team 3 with a grin on her face. At seeing Karatsuchi, Naruto frowned as he remembered the words Risho spoke during their fight about his family situation. Hey Karatsuchi, Risho's going to be alright, right? His clan isn't actually going to do anything to him, right? He asked quietly. Karatsuchi's grin immediately fell as she shook her head. Honestly, I don't know. The Kurogane clan is weird and their clan head is even weirder. It wouldn't surprise me if something like that actually happened. The Kunoichi then developed a scowl on her face. They better not try and remove him though. He fought well. He definitely doesn't deserve that. Naruto sighed. I'm kinda starting to wonder his home life was like. His clan sounds like a bunch of jackasses. Honestly, I'm wondering the same thing. The IWA Genin agreed with a sigh of her own. But I at least know all of this now. I'll definitely be there for Risho if things go bad for him back in IWA. And I know Roto and Han-sensei will help him as well. Naruto let a small smile develop on his face. As long as some people are there for him, then he should be okay. Naruto, feeling a little better about Risho's future, started to think about his next match in the Chunin exams. His smile then turned into a cocky grin. But for now, you should be focusing on our match and trying to last longer than a few minutes. Dream on. Karatsuchi scoffed with a similar cocky grin. You're gonna have to try and keep up with me. Naruto and Karatsuchi continued to banter between the two about their upcoming match. Shikamaru and Hinata watched, listening to their colorful language in amusement. The back and forth arguing between the two genin ended when Genma started to speak loudly from the center of the arena towards the crowds of people. It is now time to start the next match. Will Aburame Shino and Nara Shikamaru please come forward? The competitors in the waiting area turned their attention towards the two competitors. Shino, who had been standing in a corner alone in the waiting area, nodded to himself as he started to walk away. He gave a curious glance at Shikamaru before he walked out, heading towards the center arena. Shikamaru watched the boy head down before he sighed, realizing that he was going to have to get his fight out of the way. Well, guess it's my turn. He grumbled. Do your best, Shikamaru-kun. Hinata told her teammate with a smile. Yeah. Kick his ass out there. Naruto exclaimed. I'll do what I can. Shikamaru replied with a chuckle. He waved goodbye to his teammates as he started to walk away towards the center arena, right behind Shino. Shikamaru? Karatsuchi called out the boy's name. He stopped walking and turned his head to face the Iwa Kunoichi. She gave him a thumbs-up gesture and smiled at him. Good luck. Do your best out there, okay? Heh. Sure thing. He replied with a smirk as he waved back to her before he continued to walk towards the arena. Go Shino! Go Shino! Ino shouted loudly as she watched her teammate enter the center of the arena. Both Choji and Asuma winced at Ino's screaming. The Yamanaka was never known for being quiet, but this was even louder than how she normally was. She was also jumping around in spot during her cheering. Ino, I know it's a good thing to cheer on your teammate, but don't you think you're going a little overboard here? Asuma questioned as he rubbed his ears. Of course not. Shino is our teammate. He's representing Team 10 down there, so he needs to do great. Ino explained with a shrug. Besides, it's Shino. I know he's kinda weird and acts like he doesn't care that much about us, but I know that deep down, our opinion matters to him. He needs to hear us loud and clear, cheering him on. The Yamanaka then turned her attention back to the center of the arena. She had noticed Shikamaru was now arriving and a scowl developed on her face. Kick his ass Shino. Show him all the bug stuff you can do and take that laziest down. So loud. Asuma held his ears tight. Shino. Shikamaru. Choji looked down towards the arena, feeling conflicted. On one hand, Shino was his teammate and was a nice enough, albeit really quiet, guy that Choji enjoyed working with. On the other hand, Shikamaru was his childhood best friend and, while he was not on his team, he still felt a strong connection to them. The Akimichi didn't want to cheer for one of them over the other, and he definitely didn't want to see either of them hurt. A few seconds passed before he let a smile cross his lips. I'll just cheer for you both to do well enough to get your promotions. Go Shino. Go Shikamaru. Do great you guys. Choji shouted downward with a voice as loud as Ino's. Shikamaru, don't you dare listen to Choji. Ignore him. That was meant only for Shino. Come on Shino. Kick his ass. Ino's cheering grew even louder once Choji started. Kick his ass. My poor ears. Asuma wept silently to himself. Unlike Naruto and Risho during the match before, neither Shikamaru nor Shino had any bad blood between each other. Therefore, they did not waste any time to taunt or insult each other. They simply got into position and prepared to make the first move once their match officially started. Jinma quickly noticed their focus and realized that they were ready to begin. He then decided to not waste time himself and spoke up loudly for everybody to hear. The match between Aburame Shino and Nara Shikamaru, begin. Both Shino and Shikamaru jumped backwards, putting distance between each other. Shikamaru ultimately made the first move as he chucked a kunai with an explosive tag at Shino. The Aburame avoided the kunai as it made contact with the ground and then proceeded to jump out of the way of the subsequent explosion. He landed on the ground further away from Shikamaru and away from the hole on the ground from Shikamaru's explosion. The Aburame stared intently at the Nara as his Kikaichu insects were slowly starting to come out. Be mindful of his insects. Shikamaru told himself as he made note of the Kikaichu that were appearing. I need to keep my distance from them. Not like that should be too difficult as long as I maintain adequate use of my explosives and fire jutsus. Shino was the one to make the next move as a swarm of his Kikaichu insects started to approach the Nara rapidly. Shikamaru retaliated by making hand signs. Fire style, Phoenix Flower Jutsu. Shikamaru unleashed a barrage of fireballs heading directly towards the approaching swarm of insects. The fire flew at a rapid pace, and it seemed as if it would make contact with the Kakachu. Shino's eyes widened at the sight of the fireballs, and he jumped forward towards his insects, making hand signs of his own. Water style, water wall jutsu. A wall of water appeared from the ground right in front of the Kakachu insects. Shikamaru's fireballs made direct contact with the water wall before disappearing. Shino dropped his jutsu the second afterwards, having saved his insects from any potential harm. You're shitting me. Of course, you know water elemental ninjutsu. Nothing can be easy for me, it seems. Shikamaru grumbled under his breath. Despite Shikamaru speaking quietly, Shino managed to hear him. The Aburame gave him an amused look before speaking himself. Of course I'd learn water-style jutsus. Why, you may ask? Because of the potential danger fire can present to my Kakachu. I need to keep them protected at all costs. No, it makes sense. Never once denied that. It's smart to learn it. Shikamaru replied with a shrug as he pulled out another kunai with an explosive tag. It's just something I'm going to have to deal with. Shikamaru tossed his kunai directly at the Kakachu's swarm and activated the tag. The insects scattered immediately and avoided the resulting explosive. Shikamaru proceeded to toss more kunai with explosive tags at the separated insects and triggered the explosions at the smaller sections of Kakachu. The insects were now moving hectically as they avoided each of Shikamaru's explosions. Shino observed carefully the situation and was watching Shikamaru's every move, waiting for the first opening he could exploit. With each explosion, the Nara kept moving forward on the battlefield closer to Shino. Once he felt he was close enough, he tossed out one last kunai with an explosive tag. He then, instead of making the hand sign to activate it, made a different hand sign. Ninja Art, Shadow Possession Jutsu. Shikamaru's shadow extended from his body at a rapid rate. Shino's eyes widened at the sight. The boy appeared as if he was about to jump out of the way, but the shadow moved faster than him and made contact with his shadow. Both Shikamaru and Shino were now connected via shadow. As predicted. Shikamaru noted to himself as a confident smirk appeared on his face. He made a hand sign with his body, one that Shino's body mimicked due to Shikamaru's jutsu. Shino's too concerned about insects. All I had to do was distract him by attacking them, and he'd let himself wide open for an attack. Still, that was a little easier than I honestly ever expected. Something's not right. The connected shadow started to slowly ascend on Shino's body in the form of a hand. The shadow hand then surrounded Shino's neck and gripped it tightly. I don't really want to do any damage to you, Shino, so I'd advise you forfeit now. Shikamaru suggested. Shino gave no verbal reply. The Aburame seemed to have no reaction at all to not only getting caught by Shikamaru's jutsu, but also at the threat of potentially being strangled. This is definitely not right. What's going on? Shikamaru's thoughts stopped as he watched the Shino he had caught in his shadow start to fall apart into several small Kakachu. He had not caught the real Shino, merely a bug clone. His eyes widened in response. What the hell? Shit. Shikamaru started to scan the area around him only to see that he was now surrounded by the Kakachu beetles that were inching closer to him each second. Standing amongst the insects was Shino. How the hell did you get away from me undetected? When did you make that clone? When did you switch out with it? Shikamaru questioned immediately. Shino didn't respond immediately. He looked at the Nara in amusement as his insects continued to approach him. A few seconds finally passed before Shino spoke up. It's always a good idea for a shinobi to have an ace up their sleeves, Shikamaru-san. After saying those words, Shino made a hand sign. The Kakachu insects responded immediately and flew directly at Shikamaru at a fast rate. Shikamaru cursed to himself as he started to run through hand signs. Well Mom, it's time to see how well I learned that jutsu. Shikamaru told himself after he finished the hand signs. Ninja art, shadow protection jutsu. The shadows around Shikamaru surrounded him and formed a circular, shadowy barrier. The barrier formed just in time before the Kikaichu beetles managed to attack Shikamaru. Shino wasn't fazed, however, and continued making hand signs. His insects responded by constantly trying to attack further and break through Shikamaru's barrier. Shikamaru felt himself starting to sweat as he maintained his hand signs and kept the barrier intact. A few seconds passed before Shikamaru broke his hand signs and made a pushing gesture with the palms of his hands. The shadow barrier that surrounded him was then pushed backwards. The Kikaichu beetles that were on top of the barrier, trying to break through it, were pushed backwards and sent flying away from Shikamaru. The insects were dazed for a little bit before they stopped themselves and floated in place. They were buzzing angrily. Shino gave them a curious look for a second before he turned his attention back towards Shikamaru. Quite the interesting jutsu, Shikamaru-san. It seems to have severely irritated my Kikaichu. Shino noted nonchalantly. I can piss off insects too? Go figure. Shikamaru commented with a smirk as he brushed the sweat off his forehead. Yes, but I wouldn't necessarily wish to deal with angry Kikaichu. Why, you may ask? They're a species that remembers aggressors well and holds grudges. The Aburim commented as he made another hand sign. The insects started to charge again, buzzing even louder. I'm cool with that. But if they want revenge at me for that, then they better be ready, because I'm not going to let them give it to me easily. The Nara smirked as he made a hand sign of his own. He's good. They're both good. Karatsuchi noted with a smirk on her face as she watched the two Konoha shinobi in the arena fight. This is intense as hell. You're telling me. Naruto nodded in agreement, his eyes focused on Shikamaru and Shino. They're both geniuses, you know? I guess this is what happens when two of them fight each other. Every move by each of them is so calculated. It seems like they're trying to think steps ahead of each other. And when they get caught out, they can use their natural instinct to break free. Hinata spoke up in amazement as she watched the fight between the two strategists. It's incredible. The three genin continued to watch the fight intently as they paid attention to the strategies of the two Konoha shinobi fighting. Fire style, Phoenix Flower Jutsu. Water style, Water Wall Jutsu. As soon as Shikamaru released another barrage of fireballs towards the Kikaichu insects, Shino summoned a second, larger wall of water to block the fireballs from hitting his insects. As soon as the fireballs and the water faded away, Shikamaru tossed multiple kunai with explosive notes at the Kikaichu insects and Shino himself. The Aburame, along with his insects, managed to avoid the explosions and place more distance between the Nara and his opponents. Damn. All of my offensive is useless against him. He reacts so fast and avoids everything. I need to somehow get up close to him, just him, not his damn insects too. Shikamaru pondered to himself. It was in that moment became aware of the condition of the battlefield. The ground itself was riddled with holes from Shikamaru's explosive tags, dark holes filled with potential shadows. Maybe. Heh, why not? It's worth a shot. Shikamaru told himself. I need to at least try something. Shikamaru proceeded to rush towards Shino. Shino responded by making a gesture with his hands, urging his Kikaichu forward to attack the Nara. As soon as the beetles came close to Shikamaru to attack him, Shikamaru proceeded to make hand signs. Ninja art, shadow protection jutsu. Shikamaru surrounded himself again with the surrounding shadows in a barrier, and pushed the Kikaichu insects away from him. As soon as the beetles brushed off the daze from being shoved off again, Shino made hand signs, and they charged at Shikamaru again. The Nara then repeated the same jutsu, and used the same shadowy barrier to block the attacks, and push the insects away from him. Interesting. He's still using that technique over and over again. Shino noted to himself. This is going to backfire on him soon, however. He was sweating profusely after he used it the first time. That jutsu must require plenty of chakra to maintain. If he keeps using it like that, he's going to exhaust himself. The Aburame let a small smirk develop on his face as he made another hand sign, causing his insects to charge after Shikamaru again. If I can get him to overuse the jutsu and overexert his chakra supply, then I shall be the winner. Both Shikamaru and Shino continued the same system over and over again. Shikamaru would activate his shadow protection jutsu to knock the Kikaichu beetles away, and Shino would send his insects back in to keep up their assault. With each round, Shikamaru would rush over near one of the holes in the ground to the next. He was also starting to get closer to Shino's position, a fact that the Aburame boy noticed. Still, Shino wasn't too worried. With the amount of times the Nara was using his jutsus, he had to be nearing the limit of his chakra supply. Eventually, though, Shikamaru ended up approaching Shino. The Aburame, certain that Shikamaru did not have enough chakra for one more jutsu, urged his Kikaichu to strike one final time and defeat the Nara. Shikamaru, however, surprised as he made the same hand signs one more time. Ninja Art, Shadow Protection Jutsu. Despite Shino's prediction, the Kikaichu insects were blocked from Shikamaru by the same shadowy barrier, and were forced backward rapidly soon after. The Nara was now directly in front of the Aburame. Shit! Shino cursed mentally as Shikamaru made one final set of hand signs. Ninja Art, Shadow Possession Jutsu. Shino was too close and was surrounded by so many shadows that he couldn't avoid Shikamaru's jutsu. Their shadows were now linked and he was under the Nara's control. About damn time. Shikamaru grumbled to himself. The Nara was breathing heavily and was feeling rather exhausted. How aren't you unconscious from chakra exhaustion? Shino couldn't help but question. The Aburame's eyes were wide open and were even visible despite him wearing his sunglasses. I should be. Thankfully I've been blowing up this arena with my explosive tags. Shikamaru commented nonchalantly. He turned his head to face one of the holes nearby so Shino could see exactly what he was talking about. You see how dark it is? There are so many shadows down there that I was able to use with my jutsus. And your jutsus do not require as much chakra if you have more shadows to control and manipulate. Shino realized. Precisely. Shikamaru nodded in clarification. Shino frowned in response as realization hit him about how much he had messed. The idea that the Nara's shadow techniques were easier for them to use when they had more shadows to utilize seemed like an obvious concept in hindsight, but it was something Shino had never bothered to consider. He was so certain in his plan that Shikamaru would have gone past his limit that he let himself get careless and, as a result, he had lost. His Kikaichu insects were not going to attack Shikamaru as long as Shino was under his control. So, just saying, I have enough chakra to strangle you and knock you out. I can either do that, or you can just forfeit now. Shikamaru offered as he made a hand sign. A shadowy hand started to travel up Shino's body and reached his neck. Which will it be, Shino? I'd personally prefer the latter, but it's your call. The Aburame sighed in response as realization truly hit him that he had been outwitted. He felt his own pride wounded, but he also felt respect for Shikamaru, a respect for a fellow strategist who he was able to go toe-to-toe with. He had learned about the cost of being careless, but he also learned more about his own abilities and capabilities. He had gained a lot from this match that he felt he would take on with him into his own personal career. With that thought, he found himself content, at least slightly, with his own defeat. I concede. Shino called out to Genma. The proctor nodded before he pointed his fingers towards Shikamaru. This match is over. The winner is Nara Shikamaru. Upon hearing those words, Shikamaru released his jutsu and freed Shino from his control. The Nara then proceeded to fall to the ground while the audience started to cheer loudly for both him and Shino for their fight. God, that fight was such a pain. Glad I won though. Shikamaru breathed heavily, both from exhaustion and relief. Holy shit. Anko cursed. I'm 2 for 3. Yeah. The sensei of Team 3 proceeded to cheer even louder from the stands. Way to go, lazy ass. You were awesome out there. I'm debating about searching for a different seat. Anko won't shut up. Ibiki rolled his eyes at his colleague, screaming. Give her a break, Ibiki. She's just excited that her team is doing good. Kurenai replied with a smile as she watched Shikamaru pull himself off the ground and start to walk, along with Shino, out of the arena. I have to say, her students are really surprising me. I'd agree. He and Naruto actually seem to have a very tactical mind. Ibiki commented thoughtfully as he closed his eyes. The Nara's fight was impressive. Both he and the Aburame displayed a good knowledge of tactics and fought at a level beyond most average genin. I wouldn't be surprised if they both got promoted. I'd agree with that. Kurenai nodded in agreement. Of course he's getting promoted. So will Naruto and Hinata. Anko continued to shout loudly her praise for her team. I'm starting to wonder if she's slightly drunk. I don't think I've seen her this excited except when we get really hard-to-break visitors to the TNI department. Ibiki sighed in frustration as he watched his friend's excited reaction towards her students' victories. That sucked. Shino should have won that. Ino hissed as she crossed her arms. She huffed loudly to voice her frustration. Stupid lazy as Shikamaru. Don't be too bitter, Ino. Shikamaru earned his win, and Shino put up a good fight. Asuma told her with a smile on his face. Come on, you have to admit that Shino did well and made you proud. Ino's frustrations were calmed slightly as she really thought back to the fight and how Shino did. A few seconds passed before she smiled and responded back to her sensei, yeah, he did. Shino gave him a run for his money and did great. I think that there's a chance he may have earned Chunin too. We'll see. It's all complicated stuff whether people get the rank or not. Asuma chuckled as he turned his attention to his other student. What did you think, Choji? Next time, I'll be up in the finals as well, and I'll do just as good of job as they did, if not better. The Akimichi replied with a fire burning in his eyes. Asuma blinked in response. Such determination was unusual to see in Choji's eyes in situations that did not involve food. However, after seeing his best friend and his teammate fight against each other, the Akimichi felt a strong desire to not get left behind and prove himself as well. I'd agree with that. Ino exclaimed as she pounded her fists together. I was humiliated this year against that guy from Odo, but next time will be different. Choji and are going to rock the Chunin exams big time. Asuma watched his students react with such fire and determination that he actually laughed to himself. He was starting to imagine the shinobi that his team will become in the next few years. All three of them were showing more determination and promise than he had thought when he was first assigned to them, and each day, they surprised him in some way. It was moments like these where he was glad he finally decided to listen to his father and take on a genin team. Shikamaru-kun. Congrats, man. Shikamaru winced as his two teammates forced him into a group hug the second he walked back into the waiting area. The Nara's breathing became weaker, and he slowly started to cough. Let go. He breathed out. Hinata and Naruto immediately let go of Shikamaru. He quickly tried to relax himself as he started to breathe hard. Shortly after, he gave his two teammates a glare. You know, you two are going to be the death of me one day. Probably from suffocation. He told them. It might be easier on you if you actually return the hug. Or if you just some more muscle on you. Naruto teased back. Maybe. Shikamaru shrugged in response. His glare faded and the Nara gave his teammates a smile, not one of his usual smirks. Having said that, thanks for all the cheering and everything. Of course. Hinata replied with a smile of her own. It's what friends are for. Naruto replied with a chuckle. Shikamaru laughed in response to Naruto's comment. He soon then turned his attention to Karatsuchi. The Iwa Kunoichi gave him a smirk as she held out his hand towards him. You fought well out there. Karatsuchi stated. I tried. Shikamaru replied as he took her hand and shook it. Great job out there. Thanks. You two flirt so boringly. Naruto commented nonchalantly. Excuse me? Both Shikamaru and Karatsuchi let go of each other's hand and turned their heads toward Naruto. The blonde shrugged in response. I mean, you fought well out there? Thanks. That has no meaning behind it. It's like the two of you don't care at all. The two of you need to be more expressive and passionate when you speak to each other. Maybe like, oh, I knew you would win Shikamaru-kun, and it was because of your cheering that I was able to win. Make the other person feel something, damn it. Shikamaru and Karatsuchi openly gaped at Naruto's advice. Both shinobi also had a slight blush on their faces, and were making a concentrated effort not to look at each other. Naruto noticed their looks and started to grin happily. Hinata also noticed and giggled quietly to herself. Seconds later, the embarrassment disappeared from Shikamaru and Karatsuchi both simply looked at Naruto in anger and frustration. They both opened their mouths to respond to the boy's advice, but the words died on their tongues as Genma started to speak. We'll now begin with the third match. Will Uchiha Sasuke and Rock Lee please come forward? He stated loudly. YOSH. Finally, it is my turn to fight. Rock Lee shouted, gathering all attention from the other genin and any nearby spectators. The bushy-browed genin, who had been surprisingly quiet in the waiting area, wasted no time when he heard his name called. He jumped from the balcony and landed gracefully in the center of the battlefield. He then started to jump up and down as he eagerly waited for his match to begin. Humph. Sasuke shook his head in response to Lee's excitement. Despite the irritated grunt, the Uchiha had a smirk on his face. Guess he's just as ready as I am to get this started. With those words, Sasuke started to walk out of the waiting room and headed towards the central battlefield in the more conventional manner. The members of Team 3 and Karatsuchi watched the Uchiha leave before they turned to face each other. So, what do you guys think? You know them better, so who's gonna win? Karatsuchi questioned. I don't know. I guess Lee. Shikamaru answered. Didn't Sasuke and Lee have a spar before the Chunin exams though? I think Sasuke lost that. Things may have changed. Sasuke-san may give Lee more of a challenge this time. Hinata noted. The Nara shrugged in response. I suppose. I don't care too much, to be honest. I just hope whoever wins is exhausted by the time I have to fight them. Sasuke. Naruto thought to himself. The blonde was never close to the Uchiha by any means and, during their time in the academy, he outright resented him. It always annoyed him how much people seemed to worship him. Now, his feelings had softened and he could look at Sasuke more neutrally. As a result, he was genuinely curious how Sasuke had improved. Do your best, Sasuke. One of these days, I'd like to take you on myself. Naruto told himself as he waited impatiently for the match to begin. So Lee's gotten better, right, Guy-sensei? Tenten questioned her sensei as she watched Lee jump in place in the arena. Yes, he has. We've spent hours each day devoted to improving his skills. He is going against Kakashi's star pupil first, so we needed to prepare for whatever my eternal rival and his student have planned. Guy proclaimed as he did his standard nice guy pose. I am proud of Lee. I know that he is ready for the exams in his fight, and I know that he has what it takes to go far here. I hope so. Tenten nodded in response. Unlike her sensei, Tenten was hesitant to place a bet on this match. She knew how tough Lee was, but she also knew that Sasuke was supposed to be a prodigy similar to Lee. With the right training, he could be an absolutely devastating opponent. The kunoichi always prided herself on being a realist, and, as unfortunate as it was, she had admitted that her teammate was going to have a difficult battle for him to win. You can do it, Lee. She told herself, trying to brush off her more cynical thoughts. All she could do was hope that she was just thinking too much into the fight, and that Lee would come out victorious. You know, I realize Kakashi-sensei is always late, but I imagined he would have shown up to watch one of his students in the finals. Kiba grumbled as he looked around the seats of the arena for his sensei for the umpteenth time. Once again, he could not find him, which caused both him and Akamaru to growl in irritation. He'll be here eventually. Sakura shook her head with no concern for Kakashi. How do you think Sasuke-kun will do? Well, Lee kicked his ass pretty hard last time. Kiba noted with a snicker. Kiba. Sakura rolled her eyes and raised her fist as if she was going to punch her teammate. I'm just kidding. The Inuzuka raised his hands in defense as he started to sweat nervously in fear of his teammate. I know Lee would have kicked mine too if we fought back then. Kiba then brought his right hand to his head and started to scratch it. You know, I don't know. Sasuke's probably gotten better during the last month, but so has Lee probably. This should be a much more interesting match than their last time though. Sakura didn't reply to Kiba's opinion. She focused her attention on the center of the arena. Sasuke had arrived and was now starting to get in position. Sasuke-kun. Good luck. You know, I've been looking forward to this match since our last one before the exams. Sasuke told Lee with a smirk. I underestimated you then. That won't happen this time. I would hope so. I want to be able to take you on at your strongest. It won't prove anything to anyone here if we don't fight each other with all we got. Lee informed the Uchiha as a grin of his own developed on his face. Then let's get right on with it. No more talk, let's begin. The Uchiha stated confidently as he got into position. YOSH. Lee exclaimed in agreement as he got into position to charge to Sasuke as soon as the match started. Jinma didn't waste any more time and raised his hand into the air. The match between Uchiha Sasuke and Rock Lee began. Sasuke quickly jumped backwards and started to make hand signs, fire style, fireball jutsu. The Uchiha released a giant fireball from his mouth aimed for Lee. The Taijutsu specialist proceeded to dodge the fireball and rushed forward to Sasuke's position. He attempted to punch Sasuke, but he managed to block with his arm. After blocking Lee's attack, Sasuke continued to jump backwards, making similar hand signs to his previous set. Fire style, Phoenix Flower Jutsu. Sasuke released multiple, smaller fireballs that flew directly towards Lee. Lee proceeded to move quickly and dodge all of the oncoming attacks. Once again, he then charged Sasuke. Leaf Hurricane. Lee jumped towards Sasuke and attempted to high kick him in the Sasuke. The Uchiha avoided the kick, and then avoided another, lower kick that Lee attempted to make on him. The elder Genin proceeded to try and land a punch again on the Uchiha. Sasuke blocked all of Lee's attempts to punch him and tried to place more distance between the two, but Lee kept rushing him. He made sure that the two genin were always in close quarters of each other. Hiya! Lee shouted as he attempted another punch at Sasuke's face. Lee's fist connected and Sasuke was sent backwards. The Uchiha responded to Lee's attempt by doing backflips once he landed on the ground at a rapid rate. When he finished, he placed a good amount of distance between the two. You seem pretty adamant about keeping distance. Lee noted. A different approach to how you tried to fight last time. It's your specialty. Sasuke answered. A grin that developed on Sasuke's face as he brought his hands to his shorts. He raised his shorts slightly, revealing weights on his legs. He then started to untie them. However, I guess this is getting nowhere fast if we keep fighting like this. I'll take you on, head on. Lee quickly glanced into the stands and looked for his sensei. Once he exchanged eye contact with Guy, the genin gave Sasuke a grin as he reached down for his own leg weights. Very well then. Let's see just how fast you are. Lee exclaimed as he took off his weights. Both Lee and Sasuke dropped their weights at the same time. The resulting weight from both of their sets crushed the earth, creating craters. Immediately after, the two genin charged at each other and attempted to land a hit on the other. Holy shit! Naruto gasped as he watched Lee and Sasuke fight. The waiting area was silent for a while as they all watched the taijutsu fight between the two competing genin. Both Sasuke and Lee were moving extremely fast and were engaging in fast-paced combat. Each of them were blocking each other's attacks while subsequently trying to land a hit of their own. Nearly all of the competitors were impressed with the speed and strength of both fighters. And you're telling me I'm going to have to fight one of them later? Shikamaru quickly realized his predicament. Fan-fucking-tastic. Good luck next match, lazy ass. Karatsuchi commented, not looking away from the fight. When did Sasuke-kun get that fast? Sakura gasped as she watched both Lee and Sasuke fight against each other. I trained him too. Kiba, Akamaru, and Sakura gasped at the sound of their sensei's voice. They turned away from the fight briefly to see Kakashi sitting in the seat behind them. He gave them a small wave and a smile from behind his mask. Where the hell were you? Kiba questioned with a growl. Akamaru barked, expressing the same irritation as his partner. Sorry about that. I kinda slept in today and by the time I got here, there was a really long line in the concession stand. But I skipped breakfast this morning, so I had to wait so I could get something to eat. Kakashi told his students as he ran his left hand through his hair sheepishly. Liar. Kiba and Akamaru barked in unison. You trained Sasuke-kun to run and fight like that? Sakura questioned Kakashi, bringing the topic back to the match. Kakashi turned his attention towards the kunoichi on his team and nodded. Sasuke needed to move this fast if he wanted to even stand a chance against Lee. So, I pushed his body as far as he could go. We trained him with weights and I had him to try to mimic my own speed and fighting style. Kakashi explained how the training month went to his students. I'd say Lee may still have an edge on Sasuke in terms of speed, but Sasuke's not slow enough for Lee to really pounce on him. He's just fast enough to really give him a proper fight. I'll say. Kiba hollered as he turned his attention back to the match. I mean, damn. Look at them go. Sasuke. Sakura smiled to herself as she watched her crush move and fight. You're so cool. I must say, you have indeed gotten better. Lee complimented Sasuke in the midst of their fight as he attempted to land another punch. Damn right. I worked my ass off for this fight. I'm not going to lose, especially not in the first round of the exams. No way in hell. Sasuke exclaimed to Lee as he blocked Lee's fist and attempted to kick the spandex-wearing genin. You've realized just how much hard work and dedication matter to shinobi. I am pleased to hear that. Lee actually smiled sincerely as he blocked Sasuke's kick. You are a great opponent, Sasuke-kun, and I respect your determination. Lee's smile then developed further into a smirk. However, this is where our match ends. Lee disappeared in an instant. With Lee no longer attacking him, Sasuke made two-hand sign for a jutsu as fast as he could. Just as Sasuke finished, Lee appeared right below him and delivered a kick that knocked him upwards. I'll end it with the lotus dash. Lee's thoughts ended as he looked upward. Sasuke was no longer floating in the air. Wait, what? Where is he? A circle of leaves surrounded Lee for a moment. His vision became hazy for a few seconds, but it returned to him shortly after. The bushy-browed Jinin then realized what was happening. He must have used the Shunshin or something. He's hiding from me. Lee quickly scanned the area around him and could not find the Uchiha anywhere. To his eyes, it seemed as if Sasuke had just vanished from the world. He's here somewhere. Below? Lee wondered as he looked downward. Behind? Lee turned his head to check. Still, there was no sign of him. I'm right here. Sasuke's voice exclaimed. Lee turned in the direction of the voice, but it was too late. The Uchiha delivered a punch to his jaw that sent the Jinin flying backwards. Lee hit the ground hard. He tried to stand up afterwards, but his body wasn't letting him. The taijutsu specialist's eyes widened as he tried his hardest to stand up, but all of his attempts were failing. What's going on? I know he didn't hit me that hard. Why can't I get up? Lee continued to struggle to stand up. His mind could simply not process what was happening. The winner of the match is Uchiha Sasuke. Once again, showing that hard work is not enough, a true shinobi also needs the right bloodline and genius to succeed. Jinma spoke up, announcing the winner and giving a lecture. What? Lee's eyes widened at the declaration. He attempted to get back up and speak up, both to show that he could still fight and to reject Jinma's statement, but his body refused to move and his mouth wouldn't open. There was nothing he could do. Something's not right. What? What's going on here? Lee. Guy jumped down to the arena and stood directly in front of Lee. He looked down at his student with visible disappointment in his eyes. Guy-sensei. Lee attempted to respond to his sensei, but he couldn't open his mouth still. We spent days, weeks, working so hard, but it wasn't worth it. You just couldn't do it. Guy sighed in response as he started to walk away from his student. I guess you taught me something, Lee. I need to stop encouraging false ideas in my students if they are only destined to fail. Gai-sensei. Lee's eyes widened at the words of his sensei. Visible tears started to roll down his eyes as he tried his hardest to scream and protest. Aha! Lee screamed loudly before he fell to the ground, unconscious from the shock. Sasuke stood next to his body, a smirk evident on his face. Demonic illusion, hell viewing jutsu. Jinma quickly rushed over to Lee's body to make sure he was, truly, knocked unconscious. Once he confirmed Lee's condition, he quickly pointed towards Sasuke. Winner of the third match, Uchiha Sasuke. The crowd cheered loudly, louder than the two previous matches. Sasuke's smirk became smugger as he started to walk out of the arena. Just as he was exiting the battlefield, however, he turned his head back to look at Lee's body. Sasuke's Genjutsu presented Lee with some of the worst fears in his heart. The Uchiha was very well aware of what Lee had just witnessed and, considering what he knew about the boy, he knew precisely how Lee would feel and react to it. While Sasuke was content with it, knowing that the shock was enough to knock Lee unconscious and win him the match, he felt a small pain of guilt about using the technique. Sasuke had, indeed, developed a bit of respect for the taijutsu specialist, and knowing that he attacked the very thing the Sasuke respected in Lee, the Uchiha felt a small pang of guilt. It can't be helped. That's how a shinobi fights. Sasuke shrugged to himself before he officially left the arena. Sasuke-kun. You did it. Sakura smiled in relief as she watched Sasuke leave the arena. Okay. You taught Sasuke Genjutsu? Kiba questioned Kakashi. Yeah. Kakashi shrugged in response. The Uchiha shinobi were also renowned as Genjutsu experts, so I figured Sasuke should at least be familiar with the art. I see. Kiba nodded in acceptance. Pretty devastating technique, don't you think though? It is, but it's also a relatively basic one for genjutsu. There are much worse he can learn if he truly has an interest in the subject. Kakashi noted. He then turned his attention to Sakura. How about you, Sakura? Were you interested? Ha! The kunoichi looked at her sensei in surprise. Interested? Your near-perfect chakra control would make learning genjutsu easier for you. It's a talent that we could cultivate, and it could make you a truly devastating kunoichi. Her sensei explained. He then gave her a smile as he looked at her intently. Well, would you be interested in learning the jutsu Sasuke just used, and maybe some more genjutsu? Interested. Sakura was truly impressed with Sasuke and all that he was able to do, but she had also felt like she was outclassed watching him and Lee. She felt trivial and weak next to everything he could do. Hearing her sensei tell her that she could accomplish one of the techniques that Sasuke was able to do, and that she could become an expert in a field make her excited. A fire burned in her eyes as she nodded fervently in response to her sensei's question. Yes. Of course. We'll begin tomorrow once the exams are over then. Kakashi informed her with a smile. Genjutsu. Guy frowned as he watched his student get escorted out of the arena. Guy-sensei? Tenten noticed Guy's tone of voice and turned her attention towards him. Guy didn't immediately respond. His mind was running through different scenarios in his hand, where he helped Lee more with his understanding of genjutsu and how to counter it. In a world where he taught Lee this information, would he have gotten out in time and managed to keep fighting Sasuke? And maybe managed to defeat the Uchiha? It was all hypotheticals, but Guy genuinely believed it would have happened. In his mind, Lee lost because he didn't properly prepare him for the fight. Guy-sensei? Tenten repeated her sensei's name louder. Concern was now evident in her voice. Ha! What? Guy turned his attention towards Tenten. He then laughed nervously to her. Did you say something, Tenten? Are you okay, sensei? She asked him with slightly narrowed eyes. I'm fine. Guy replied after a few seconds. He then gave her the nice guy pose. I'm just thinking about things I can change with my teachings. There is so much more that I need to teach you, Lee and Neji, and I will make a concentrated effort to work on these things once the exams end. Okay. Tenten sighed in response. Guy's mood seemed to flip-flop within seconds. It was interactions like this that made her wonder if she would ever understand him, or Lee for that matter. You know, I have to admit, Sasuke did a good job. Naruto commented, offering praise towards the Uchiha's fight. Shikamaru's eyes widened as he quickly made a hand sign. Kai? What are you doing? The Uzumaki questioned. Sasuke must have hit us all with a genjutsu as well. That's the only way I can ever see you giving him a compliment. This can't be real life. The Nara explained as he made the same hand sign. Kai? Oh, shut up. Naruto rolled his eyes. Both Hinata and Karatsuchi giggled at the banter between the two boys. He really was pretty impressive, you know? He's going to be a lot of fun to fight later in the tournament. Karatsuchi smirked in response. Yeah, well, I'll trade places with ya. I'm not looking forward to that fight next round. Shikamaru grumbled. I'm sure you'll do fine, Shikamaru-kun. Hinata informed the Nara. She placed her hand on his shoulder to reassure him. Shikamaru scoffed in response. Hinata, at first, frowned at his reaction. Then, an idea entered her head, and she started to giggle. Then again, you'd need to stop being a lazy, but and actually work for that victory. Shikamaru's eyes widened at what Hinata said, and he immediately shook his head. Hinata, don't you get started on that shit too. I already have enough people calling me out on that stuff. What, she's just stating a fact, you're a lazy ass. Karatsuchi deadpanned. She's right, you know? Naruto nodded in agreement. Hinata expressed her agreement as well. Troublesome people. Shikamaru grumbled to himself, which earned laughter from his friends. Lee. Neji shook his head as he watched Sasuke enter the waiting room again after his match. Hopefully now, you understand that destiny cannot be changed. No matter how hard you work to fight it, certain facts were set in stone by fate. A genius will remain a genius and a failure will always be a failure. Neji turned his attention to a group of genin in the waiting room, the members of Team 3, and the IWA Kunoichi, Karatsuchi. He watched them talk and laugh amongst each other as they discussed the Uchiha's victory and what the rest of the tournament. Neji watched Hinata giggling with her teammates and smiling. He glared directly at her. Hinata seemed so different than how she was nearly a year ago. Her time was seemingly changing her personality. However, no matter what Hinata does to try and change herself, Neji knew the truth. She was the failed heiress of the main family. Nothing was going to change that fact. She was going to prove herself a failure. At the moment, it seemed like she had forgotten that fact about herself. It was about time she was reminded about the path destiny had planned for her. Hinata-sama. It's about time I teach you the same lesson Lee learned. Neji tightened his fists as he thought about the next match. Chapter 26, Destiny of the Hyuga. The fourth match will begin shortly. Will Hyuga Hinata and Hyuga Neji please come forward? Jinma called out the names of the next participants. The members of Team 3 in Karatsuchi, who had been in the middle of a conversation, stopped talking. Hinata's eyes widened and her heart started to beat rapidly. Well, it's time, she told herself. Hinata's eyes wandered to her cousin. Neji was staring intently, giving her a glare. Once he noticed that she was looking back at him, a scowl developed on his lips as he shook his head at her. He then started to walk towards the exit of the waiting area, towards the stairs. Hinata continued to watch her cousin as she started to imagine the fight that they were about to have. Hey, Hinata-chan. You good? The Hyuga was snapped out of her thoughts at the sound of her crush's voice. She turned her attention back to her friends, who were looking at her in concern. She gave them a small smile before speaking. I'm fine, she told them, resisting the urge to sigh. You better be. You gotta fight to win. Karatsuchi started sharply with a grin. The Hyuga looked downward for a moment before she gave her friend a grin of her own. Right. Think calm during your fight, Hinata. From what I've heard, Neji loves to psych out and toy with his opponents. Go in with a calm mind and just fight. Don't listen to a thing he says. Shikamaru advised. I know. Hinata frowned slightly at Shikamaru's advice. She was very well aware of Neji's tendency to toy with people he didn't respect. Hinata, unfortunately, was on that particular list and was used to Neji's taunting. You have this fight in the bag otherwise. That's what I think at least. Shikamaru continued with a smirk. Just don't let him get in your head. Go out there and kick his ass. He's right. Naruto nodded in agreement. The Hyuga turned her attention towards the Uzumaki. Naruto-kun. Naruto smiled and placed his right hand on her shoulder. You've gotten a lot stronger during the month. I can just tell. So go out there and show your jackass cousin just how much. Show everybody here Databeo. A small blush developed on the blonde's cheeks. Do your best. Naruto-kun. Hinata quickly gave her teammate a hug, one he was quick to return. A blush developed equally red as Naruto's developed on her face as another grin crossed her lips. Watch me out there and cheer me on, okay? Of course. Naruto replied. The two broke their hug soon after. Hinata waved goodbye to her friends before she walked out of the waiting room and headed for the stairs. Once the girl was finally out of the area, both Shikamaru and Karatsuchi turned to face the blonde. The two of them had matching, cheeky grins on their faces. Naruto noticed the looks they were giving him and tilted his head in confusion. "What?" he questioned. "So, should we be expecting a declaration of love once she gets back up here, or immediately after the match when she's still on the battlefield?" Shikamaru asked teasingly. What are you?" Naruto's cheeks reddened further as his two friends started to laugh. He then started to scowl at them. It's not. You guys. We're just. Shut the hell up and stop laughing, Databeo." Much to his chagrin, Shikamaru and Karatsuchi did not stop laughing. If anything, the laughing grew louder. Hinata went down one flight of stairs on her way to the battlefield. She was about to go down a second flight of stairs when she noticed Neji standing at the bottom, glaring at her. "Neji Nezen." Hinata mumbled her cousin's name in surprise. "I wasn't expecting you to wait for me. I felt that we should talk, away from your teammates. I'd rather they not influence your answer." Neji told her, his glare never ceasing for a second. "You should surrender now while you have the chance." "Ha!" The Hyuga heiress's eyes widened. "We both know exactly how this will go, Hinata-sama." He sneered when he said her name. "Your friends may have tried to hide the fact from you, and maybe you believed it for a moment, but you can't hide from fate for long. You have always been a failure amongst the clan, and nothing you do or anyone says can change that." Neji's glare intensified as he continued to speak. "So, I'd advise forfeiting now before you humiliate yourself and the clan further, and get yourself injured." For a moment, Hinata's eyes lowered as she recalled her training with the Hyuga clan when she was younger. She remembered all the disappointment she brought to her father and the elders of her clan. She even heard conversations about them considering removing her title as heiress and passing it down to her sister, Hanabi. She knew that Neji was right, she was a failure. But that's all in the past. "I'm not that girl anymore," she told herself sharply as she brought her eyes back forward towards her cousin and started to walk down the stairs. "I'm not going to forfeit." Her cousin raised his eyebrows in response. "I won't quit. I will give it my all and fight you, Neji Nezen. Because I'm not the girl I was before. I have friends who believe in me now and know what I can do." Images of Naruto, Shikamaru, Anko, Karatsuchi, Roto, and Han entered her head. But also, the Hyuga also started remembering her own training during the month with her father. "Father. I also believe in myself, and I know I can do anything if I try hard enough." "Humph." Neji scoffed in response. "I'd be careful with your beliefs, Hinata-sama. Such thoughts may get you killed one day." Hinata shook her head in response. "It's not harmful, it's the truth. I can fight you, Neji Nezen, and I want to show you who I really am. I want to show you that anybody, from people like me to people like you, can change their fate. Tell that to every member of the branch clan. Tell that to my father." Neji hissed, his eyes darkening exponentially. "Walk up to his memorial and tell him that his fate could have been changed." Hinata's determination and confidence started to fade and her eyes went downward again as she recalled her uncle, Hisashi. The circumstances behind Hisashi's death were a sore subject for her, but an even sorer subject for Neji. Neji Nezen. The Hyuga heiress arrived at the bottom of the stairs. Once she arrived, the two cousins started to walk together. Hinata opened her mouth to respond to Neji's comment about his father, but she was cut off by Neji, who decided to speak up first. "If you are actually going to fight me, then I can't guarantee your safety. I will fight with everything I have," he informed her sharply. Hinata looked upward again and nodded at her cousin. "I expect nothing less." The elder Hyuga scoffed in response, but gave no verbal reply. The two cousins remained silent as they continued walking. The clan elders of the Hyuga clan all sat together in the stands of the arena, along with Hayashi and his youngest daughter, Hanabi. They watched the previous fights with slight interest, but they were now staring at the arena with their full attention. It was now time to see the heiress of the main branch fight the prodigy of the branch family. The elders started to whisper to each other about their predictions and expectations for the upcoming fight. "Watch this fight closely, Hanabi," Hayashi requested to his daughter. "There is no fight you can learn more from than this one right here." "Right." Hanabi nodded in understanding. "Who do you think will win, father?" Hayashi did not respond immediately, as he truly pondered that question. He had been wondering this question since he started his training with Hinata. For the first week, he knew that his nephew would be the one who would be victorious. Now, however, he watched his eldest daughter reveal a whole new side to her that he was unaware existed. He saw the full extent of her determination and strength. There was no denying that Hinata was much stronger than he had ever expected her to be. He had earned her respect no matter what, even if she lost to Neji. The only question is, did she get strong enough? Can she match Neji? Hayashi continued to repeat the question. The match will start soon. We shall see once it starts. Hayashi finally spoke his thoughts. Since she was in public and didn't want to act in a way that went against the Hyuga clan's normally stoic image, Hanabi resisted the urge to frown at her father's answer. Instead, she turned her attention to the center of the battlefield. Unlike her father, her thoughts were much simpler. Good luck, Nei-san. Hinata. Kurenai mumbled the name of the Hyuga heiress as she watched her and Neji step forward to the battleground. You know, Kurenai, I always wondered, how exactly do you know my student? Anko asked curiously as she briefly turned her attention to her friend. I never actually introduced you to any of them when I picked them up, so what gives? I've been acquainted with Hinata for about 2 or 3 years now. Hokage-sama asked me to look after her one day and investigate some of the treatment the Hyuga clan elders may have given her. Kurenai sighed. Anko sighed in response. Things have been better with her clan and her father, but I did read her file that she was bad off when she first started. The clan elders didn't like her much at all. No. They wanted her removed as heiress. And her father seemed as if he was going to do nothing to stop them, until now that is. Kinda late though in my opinion to decide to turn your attention back to your daughter and decide to act like a father. The red-eyed Jonin rolled her eyes slightly. Her eyes softened though, as she turned to look back at the Hyuga heiress. I was actually planning on picking her up this year as a genin student. Believe it or not, I was actually jealous that you got to be her sensei instead of me. I can understand that. Anko nodded. A small smile developed on her face. She's a great girl and she's going to be an amazing kunoichi, considering the kick-ass one she is already. I'm pretty damn lucky to have her as a student. The Tokubetsu Jonin then placed her hand on Kurenai's shoulder. She's a tough girl. Just watch, she's going to show all those dumbass elders in her clan how tough she really is. She dash. If you two actually want to see what she is capable of, then shut up. The match is about to start. Ibiki spoke up irritably, interrupting their conversation. Anko and Kurenai immediately quieted themselves and paid attention to the battleground as they waited for the two Hyuga to start their fight. Both Hinata and Neji had already talked before their match on the stairs. They had nothing left to say. Once they got on the battlefield, they simply stood across from each other and waited for the proctor to signal the beginning of the match. The fourth match between Hyuga Hinata and Hyuga Neji. Jinma raised his hand. Begin. Byakugan. Byakugan. Both Hinata and Neji exclaimed in unison as they activated their dojutsu. The two Hyuga genin proceeded to get into position and ready to fight. Neji entered the standard gentle fist stance while Hinata entered a similar, yet slightly different, variant of the stance. Neji immediately noticed the slight changes and his eyebrows rose. So I suppose it was true, Hinata-sama was working on a variant of the gentle fist. Neji let a small grin develop on his face. An interesting idea, but in the end, it is futile. Neji didn't waste any more time and charged his cousin. Hinata quickly sidestepped out of the way of his palm and proceeded to strike at him with a palm strike of her own. The Hyuga prodigy blocked her attack with his arm and attempted to attack her again, this time aiming for the tenketsu in her chest. Hinata managed to dodge by leaning back. She then attempted to sweep him off his feet with a kick, but her cousin quickly jumped backwards to avoid her attack. Seeing that Neji put distance between the two of them, Hinata quickly started making hand signs. Water style, gunshot. Hinata released a rapid-fire barrage of water bullets from her mouth aimed directly for her cousin. Neji's eyes widened at the sight of the jutsu for a second, before they narrowed in concentration. He proceeded to avoid each individual water bullet before charging again at his cousin. I was interested in seeing your variant style of the gentle fist, but even you know that it's not worth anything if you've already resorted to using other techniques. Neji taunted as he raised his palm, ready to attack Hinata. The Hyuga heiress didn't respond immediately as she focused on sidestepping and avoiding Neji's palm. She then managed to strike her cousin with a palm of her own, hitting some of the tenketsu in his shoulder. The elder Hyuga winced as he quickly moved backwards to avoid another attack from Hinata. I'm not resorting to anything else, Neji Nizan. I want my fighting style as varied as possible, with different types of attacks. Hinata explained as she quickly got back into her stance, ready for Neji's next attack. TSK. She made the first hit. Neji shook his head in frustration. I let myself lose focus for a moment. That won't happen again, Hinata-sama. Neji, once again, charged at his cousin. Hinata quickly sidestepped, avoiding his attack. Neji, however, predicted her dodge and struck again faster at his cousin. Hinata wasn't able to avoid his attack and managed to get struck in her shoulder. The elder cousin managed to land a hit at her tenketsu. She winced from pain, but responded back immediately and delivered a palm of her own at her cousin. She managed to deliver a quick hit at his tenketsu in his right arm before he could jump away from her. She hit again. Neji mentally cursed as he glared at his cousin. He noticed that she was still wincing a little from his attack, which let a small grin develop on his face. However, looks like I managed to hit her harder. Neji's attacks are ruthless. I have to be more careful. Hinata told herself with a shake of her head. Be more mindful, Hinata. I can't take too many and lose this easily. I have to prove myself to everyone here. Naruto-kun, father, and Neji. The two Hyuga proceeded to charge each other as they attempted to land attacks at each other. Whoa. Hanabi mumbled in surprise. All of the Hyuga in attendance had their Byakugan activated as they watched the fight in detail. Both Neji and Hinata were constantly attacking each other. Neji was the one to instigate the fights while Hinata would usually try to avoid his attacks and strike back with her own counterattacks. Every few seconds, the two cousins would jump backwards and start up again fresh, continuing to try and land hits at the other. Hinata's evasion appeared to be working well, and she was able to avoid most of her cousin's onslaught. A few of Neji's attacks would land, however, and the heiress would usually wince in pain at them as more and more of her tenketsu were being sealed off. Neji, however, was also getting hit by Hinata's palms. The Hyuga prodigy was starting to get some of his tenketsu sealed off as well. It was impossible to determine which of the two had the advantage. From the perspective of the Hyuga observers, the match was even. I have to admit I wasn't expecting Hinata to be a match for Neji. Isn't he the best of his generation? One of the elders questioned as he watched the fight intently. While that is true, he is just a member of the branch family. It's almost an insult that Hinata hasn't won already, considering she is of the main house. Another elder scoffed in response, saying that is a disservice to both Hinata and Neji. The two are proving to be extraordinary so far. A third elder spoke up, rejecting the previous elder's claim. I have to agree with him. A fourth elder nodded in agreement. And I must say, I was expecting to see Hinata lose a direct fight with Neji like this. Her new style suits her well. It's giving her a chance to fight him directly. Hinata. Neji. Hayashi was too wrapped up in his thoughts to respond to the bickering and comments amongst the elders. He was too focused on the battle between his eldest daughter and his nephew. I'm landing my hits on him, but I'm taking too much of his hits myself. I need to try something else again. Hinata told herself as she jumped backwards, away from her cousin. Neji, once again, charged his cousin. Hinata jumped backwards to avoid his next strike again. Once Neji rushed up to her again, she made hand signs. Water style, gunshot. Hinata released another barrage of water bullets from her mouth once the elder Hyuga was in close range to her. Neji's eyes widened and he was forced to jump out of the backwards to avoid the attack. The Hyuga heiress took the opportunity to place more distance between her and her cousin as she pulled out her bow. She quickly grabbed an arrow and fired it at her cousin. She then proceeded to fire more arrows at him as she started to run in circles around him rapidly, always changing her position and the direction of the approaching arrows. Archery? I also heard you were practicing with that, but I really didn't think even you would try something like that in a fight with me. What an absolute waste of time. Neji mentally scoffed. His Byakugan made him aware of all of his cousin's attacks, despite her constant movement. He proceeded to duck and sidestep, avoiding all of her arrows. Nevertheless, Hinata continued to fire away at him. A few seconds passed before Hinata stopped firing arrows. Neji was now standing in the middle of 15 arrows that were lodged into the ground. All of them had managed to miss their target. The elder Hyuga smirked smugly at his cousin and was about to charge at his cousin once again, but he noticed something in the corner of his vision. His eyes quickly went to one of the arrows and he noticed the tag on it. Explosive tags? Neji realized with wide eyes. He then looked over to another arrow and noticed the same tag. They were all prepared with explosive tags. Ha! Look at Neji's face. Naruto smirked as he watched Hinata's display with the arrows and the explosive tags. He looks like he just pissed himself. Hinata-chan got one over him good. I wonder where she got that idea from though. Karatsuchi rolled her eyes as she looked at the Nara in the waiting room. Surely not from somebody who overuses those things to death. Explosive tags are a great tool and should be used by everybody. Shikamaru huffed in response with a surprising amount of passion. Just as he was getting annoyed with people calling him lazy, he was also annoyed that he had to constantly defend his usage of explosive tags. It only makes sense that Hinata would see that too. She's the only other sensible one here that would see them like me. What did you say? Naruto and Karatsuchi nearly shouted in unison. The three could have continued their argument, but they stopped to continue watching Hinata's fight. The Hyuga heiress was really showing everyone exactly what she was capable of, and all three of them did not want to miss anything else she had to show. Naruto, especially, didn't want to miss a second of the match. You got him on the ropes, Hinata-chan. Keep it up. He mentally cheered for his teammate. What are you going to do now, Neji-Nizan? Hinata wondered as she made a hand sign, activating the explosive tags. Neji realized that he needed to get out of the way and avoid the explosive tags, but he wasn't certain if he could jump out in time without taking some damage from them. He shook his head as the only way to avoid taking the hit entered his head. I can't believe I was forced to use this against you, Hinata-sama. I was hoping to save this ace up my sleeve for a later fight, but it can't be helped. TSK. Neji thought bitterly. The elder Hyuga quickly started to spin in place rapidly as the explosive tags started to detonate. Rotation. A shield of chakra appeared and surrounded Neji as he spun in a circle on the ground. The shield developed in time before the explosive tags activated, protecting him from the resulting explosions. Once all of the tags were activated and used, the elder Hyuga stopped spinning and the chakra shield disappeared. He stood in the middle of multiple holes in the ground, from his jutsu and from the explosions, completely uninjured. There's no way. One of the elders nearly shrieked at the sight. The entire population of the Hyuga elders bickered amongst each other about the sight they witnessed and the probability of it actually happening. Father, that was... Hanabi mumbled in surprise. 8 trigrams palm rotation. A jutsu only passed down orally amongst the main branch of the Hyuga. Hayashi replied to Hanabi's surprise. The Hyuga clan head was now gaping at the sight as he stared at his nephew intently. Neji. So this is what the other members of the clan mean when they say Neji's a genius. Hanabi realized. To accomplish such a task and perform such a jutsu with no instruction. Hisashi, your son is truly a genius. Hayashi closed his eyes and shook his head back and forth. I am so sorry that you aren't here to witness him for yourself. Neji. That was... Hinata's eyes were wide in surprise. The Hyuga heiress activated the explosive tags knowing full well that Neji would somehow be able to avoid the attack, at least somewhat. What she didn't expect was for him to use the rotation, a technique that she was having a difficult time performing in general. Yes, it was. Neji nodded, answering Hinata's unfinished question. A cocky smirk developed on his face. Ironic, isn't it? You, a member of the main household, are having difficulty performing the jutsu despite the help of your father. Yet I, a member of the branch family, managed to learn how to use the jutsu without any assistance from the clan. Neji Nizan. You did it. Hinata couldn't help herself, she smiled at her cousin. Excuse me? The elder Hyuga gave a confused look. You fought back against your fate. She explained. She noticed her cousin gritting his teeth and him tightening his fists, but she continued to speak. She knew that Neji needed to hear this. Fate put you in the branch family, but you fought back and learned a technique reserved for the main household. You didn't let destiny hold your genius back, you kept trying and learned something outside of what you were told you were capable of. Hinata's smile grew wider. You defeated your own destiny. Shut up. Neji nearly growled in response. You. How dare you? How dare you pervert my training and example to fit your beliefs? His glare intensified as he stared down his cousin. Nothing can change fate. I was destined to learn this technique by being a genius and a prodigy. And you are destined to be unsuccessful because that is what you are, a failure. Nothing can change their fate, Hinata-sama. Her cousin spat her name out as if it was poison. My father couldn't change his, I can't change mine, and you most certainly can't change yours. Neji charged his cousin again immediately. The elder Hyuga struck her at a rapid rate, and she wasn't able to avoid his palm strike to her chest. She was knocked backwards slightly and coughed up blood slightly. He then struck at Hinata again, aiming for another tenketsu point by her chest. The Hyuga heiress, this time, was able to jump backwards to avoid Neji's next palm strike. She was then forced to sidestep and continue her dodging as the Hyuga prodigy continued his onslaught, not wavering even for a second. Such rage. It's causing him to move faster and fight more ruthlessly. Hinata realized as she continued to try and avoid Neji's attacks. She didn't even have the time to try and counterattack him, he was attacking her that fast. Neji Nizan. How do you have so much anger? Hinata continued to try and place more distance and get to a place where she could attack Neji back, but her cousin wasn't giving her the opportunity. His attacks continued at great speed and Hinata couldn't do anything to stop him. I could maybe try that. That'll work. Hinata realized. I just need to distract him even for a second. As Hinata continued to dodge his techniques, Neji finally let up for just one moment. Hinata had managed to insult his beliefs, and by association, everything he viewed about his father and himself. The Hyuga prodigy was infuriated and was no longer interested in fighting her. He wanted to end the fight now and crush her and her belief about fighting back against fate. This fight ends now, Hinata-sama. Neji spoke coldly as he entered a new stance. You are within my field of divination. Hinata's eyes widened once again. Neji-Nizan, that's just... How? He's even capable of dash. She then shook her head as she entered another stance of her own as realization hit her. Wait, this is the chance I was looking for. 8 trigram, 64 palms. 2 palms. Protection of the 8 trigrams, 64 palms. Neji's first palm strike, laced with his own chakra, made direct contact with a stream of chakra released from Hinata's palm. The collision of chakra created a small explosion that surrounded the two Hyuga. Dust started to cover the area around them, completely hiding their fight from the observers. Hinata-chan! Naruto shouted in a mixture of awe and fright. What the fuck just happened? Damn. Shikamaru shook his head. Hinata, be careful. What the fuck? Anko's eyes widened at the sight of the explosion. What jutsu does she know that can cause that? Hinata. Be careful. Kurenai closed her eyes for a second as she thought of the Hyuga heiress. Hinata-Nizan. Hanabi nearly screamed as soon as the explosion occurred. Hinata. Neji. Hayashi shook his head at the sight, both of Neji's use of the 8 trigram 64 palms and from Hinata's use of her completed, original jutsu. Great things are going to happen from both of you. You are the 2 best shinobi the Hyuga clan has produced in years. Amidst the dust, Neji was hit by a barrage of chakra streams coming from Hinata's palms. The Hyuga heiress was moving her palms and the rest of her body at a quick, circular pace. The Hyuga prodigy was getting cut up by the resulting streams, but he didn't let it stop him from his attack. He continued to try and land his own palm strikes from his jutsu on his cousin. Each of his attempts failed, however, as every single palm strike was blocked by the streams of chakra and resulted in him getting cut up further. What is this jutsu? Neji questioned to himself as he grit his teeth in pain. This can't be happening, it can't. Hinata finally ended her jutsu and pushed her palms forward, releasing all of the streams forward. Neji was hit full force by the streams. The Hyuga prodigy was cut deeply by them and was sent flying. The dust that covered their fight was cleared at that moment as Neji flew backwards. The elder Hyuga hit the ground hard and rolled for a few seconds before he finally stopped rolling and lied on his stomach. With her jutsu completed, Hinata finally stopped moving in place and nearly fell to the ground herself. She was breathing extremely hard and was having trouble standing upward. She too was also slightly cut up from her own jutsu, a sign that she still needed to work on improving her technique. I don't think I can do much more. Please, let that be it. She thought to herself amongst her heavy breathing. All eyes were on Neji. The elder Hyuga's clothes were cut deeply, and he was bleeding quite a bit from any of his exposed skin. Despite the great damage, the Hyuga prodigy continued to try and stand up and continue fighting. I'm not done, he told himself as he forced his body back. He finally pulled himself back to his feet and stared intently at Hinata, who was looking at him with surprise evident in her eyes. I won't give up here. I won't dash. Neji's thoughts stopped as he tried to take a step towards Hinata. He quickly fell to the ground and hit the surface hard on his stomach again. Once again, the elder Hyuga tried to get back up. This time, however, he failed to stand up and managed to hit the ground again. No. His eyes widened as he realized what had happened. Jinma seemed to come to the same realization as he made a quick checkup on Neji's condition. He then held out his hand towards Hinata. Winner of the fourth match, Hyuga Hinata. Jinma's declaration was met with a roar of applause from the audience. 3 for 3. Anko nearly screamed. Yeah, Hinata. Way to fucking go. Ibiki didn't even bother to complain this time about Anko. He simply massaged the temples on his head with his hands, trying to avoid the headache that he knew Anko was going to give him. Hinata. Kurenai let a small smile develop on her face as she watched Hinata stare out into the crowd of people applauding her. You've really gotten stronger. The proctor of the second exam turned her attention briefly to her friend. Anko was still screaming and cheering for Hinata due to her success in the match. Kurenai couldn't help but chuckle as she stared at her best friend. I don't know how much of her strength came from her friends or from anyone else, but I know you certainly helped her out. Anko, thank you. Kurenai made a note to thank her friend when she calmed down and stopped screaming. Unfortunately, she would have a while to wait before that happened. Anko was going to be shouting and cheering for what seemed like a while. Yeah, Hinata-chan. Naruto cheered loudly from the waiting area as well, shouting just as loud as his sensei. I knew you could do it. That was actually really badass. Karatsuchi commented with a grin. Hinata fought like a true badass. Are you really that surprised? She's always had it in her. Naruto called out to the IWA Kunoichi. He had a giant grin on his face that seemingly was not going away anytime soon. No, I'm not. I'm just saying. Karatsuchi replied with a chuckle. She had always seen Hinata as a friend since their mission at the Tenchi Bridge, but she was now starting to look at the girl with even more respect as a shinobi. I really want to fight her myself, honestly. You and fighting. Shikamaru rolled his eyes for a second before he turned his attention to Hinata. The Hyuga was currently staring in their direction with a bright red blush. More than likely, she had heart Naruto's cheering even over the crowd of other people's applause. The Nara waited until her eyes flickered over towards him. He gave her a thumbs up, a gesture she was quick to return. Hinata. In all the time we've been friends, I have to say, you've grown up. You're a lot tougher than anyone, even you, gave you credit for. Shikamaru noted internally as he smiled at his friend. Now hopefully you'll realize that yourself. Hinata had not been prepared for the cheering and the applause, so she managed to awkwardly look and blush as she looked at all of the people cheering for her. To her, she felt like she was on cloud 9. She managed to find her teammates and Anko and smiled back to them, but shortly afterwards, she got out of her daze and entered the real world again. Once she walked over slowly towards Neji's body. Medic ninjas were already entering the scene and were preparing to escort him out to the infirmary. Neji Nizan. Hinata called out to her cousin as he was being lifted. The Hyuga prodigy didn't say anything for a second as he glared at Hinata. He still couldn't really move properly, thanks to being hit so hard directly and up close by Hinata's jutsu. A few seconds passed before his eyes started to relax. Instead of a glare, he simply looked at her bitterly. I was wrong about you, Hinata-sama. You were not the failure I saw, I was. I failed to read your fate, and this was the result of my ineptitude. Neji, don't talk like that. Hinata shook her head, dropping the use of his honorific. That got his attention as he looked at her without the bitterness. You weren't wrong. I used to be weak. I used to be a failure. I wasn't strong, and I could barely function after training. And I used to not believe in myself. I knew I was a failure back then. She then smiled at her cousin. But that's not who I am anymore. I have friends who helped me get my confidence. I have gotten stronger and trained harder than I ever thought I could. I've gotten stronger than I ever thought I was. And, for the first time in my life, I can say that I know that I am not the failure that I thought I was. If I was destined to be a failure, then I have changed my destiny. I fought back at fate and won. Just like you did when you learned both the rotation and the 64 palms. Hinata explained as tears started to fall from her eyes as she slowly became more passionate in her speech. Neji. Fate can be changed. I changed mine and you changed yours. And together, we can change the fate of the Hyuga clan, for both branches. Neji's eyes widened in complete shock after Hinata's declaration. He barely even noticed that the medic ninjas had lifted him up and put him on a stretcher. He didn't even notice that he was being carried away. Neji. Hinata called out to him as he was carried out. She brushed away her tears and gave him a smile. Please. Don't forget that. Neji couldn't even respond as he simply watched her while he was escorted away from the battlefield. As soon as Neji was escorted out of the battlefield on his stretcher, Hayashi stood up from his place in the stands. Hanabi quickly looked over to her father. Where are you going? She asked him. I have business to do. It won't take long. He replied quietly as he walked off. Hanabi sighed, wondering why her father seemed to have been acting strange during the entire match. Once he left, she was left alone with the Hyuga clan elders. None of them were paying attention to her, and were still just talking amongst themselves about what they thought of the match. Realizing that she didn't have anyone to monitor how she was acting, a large grin developed on her face, and she squealed slightly in excitement. Hinata Nezen. That was so cool. She told herself as she starting to clap slightly with the rest of the audience. I hope that I become as amazing of a shinobi as you are when I'm your age. It took Hayashi about 5 minutes to arrive at his destination, the infirmary in the stadium. The Hyuga clan leader went to open the door, but the door opened from the other side. Kurogane Risho walked out, bandaged up and seemingly okay to walk after his fight with Naruto in the first match. The IWA Genin noticed Hayashi's presence almost immediately and realized that he was blocking the door to the room. Pardon me. He mumbled an apology as he started to walk down the hallway of the stadium. Hayashi took a moment to look at the retreating boy before he returned his attention to the door and opened it. He then entered the infirmary. A few medic ninjas were in the room attending to both Lee and Neji. Lee was still unconscious from shock after the genjutsu during his fight. Neji, on the other hand, was lying on a bed as the medic ninjas finished applying bandages. About another minute passed before they finished and noticed Hayashi's presence. Hyuga-sama. One of the medics bowed in respect. Neji will be fine. We have his wounds bandaged already and already conducted most of the necessary jutsus needed on him. We'll give him a checkup in around 30 minutes and, if all is good, he will be cleared to move around. Thank you. Hayashi bowed his head in thanks. If you are good for a few minutes, do you care if I talk to him in privacy? I realize it can't be long, this will only be for a few minutes at most. Of course. The medic replied before making a signal to his coworkers. They all proceeded to leave the room. Hayashi and Neji were now alone in the room together. Neji sighed at the sight of the clan head. He wasn't in the mood for company, especially the company of his uncle. However, fate seemed to have other plans. There was an awkward silence in the room for the first few seconds that was broken by Neji. You did an excellent job with Hinata-sama during your training with her this month. He admitted, looking downward slightly. As expected of the clan head, but your eyes are much stronger than mine. While mine only saw her as a failure, you saw the potential she really had and helped her develop it. You were aware of her true fate while I was not. The Hyuga prodigy proceeded to shake his head in shame. My eyes still need to develop further. Neji, you and I are very similar in a way that I wish we weren't. Hayashi replied with a sigh. His comment gained the attention of Neji, who was now looking at him in confusion. Like you, I saw Hinata as a failure. She was my eldest daughter, and I should have seen who she really was better than most, but I saw her as too gentle and kind. She didn't seem like she could ever be a proper Hyuga shinobi, so I turned my back on her. I allowed her to train with others, like Naruto, because I didn't want to bother with wasting my time. The Hyuga clan head proceeded to shake his own head out of embarrassment and disappointment in himself. I can't say I did a good job this month with her in all honesty, Neji. I saw her similar to how you did. Then what changed your perception? Why were you willing to give her a chance to see what she could do? Neji questioned. She changed my perception. She made herself more capable. Hinata did everything she could to get tougher through the help of others and through her own work. She changed who she was on her own, and showed that I was being blind in how I saw her. Hayashi stated bluntly. Niji's eyes widened at the comment. Referring to a Hyuga as blind was one of the sharpest insults possible. For his uncle to refer himself with such a comment meant that the man truly felt shame with how he acted and saw Hinata earlier. I didn't do anything to change my perception of her. She did all by herself. She changed how I saw her fate. She changed her fate. Hayashi continued to clarify. I see. Neji closed his eyes at Hayashi's statement. He repeated the same statement Hinata had been telling him. Just like Hinata, he was telling him things that directly contrasted with how he viewed life. For the first time in his life, Neji really had no clue what he was supposed to think about something. Neji, I haven't been a good father to Hinata. And I haven't been a good uncle to you. Hayashi commented sadly as he looked at his nephew. It's time you and I had a talk about your father and the truth about what happened that night. My father? Niji's eyes widened as he stared at his uncle. A mixture of emotions entered his eyes, confusion, sadness, and anger. Hayashi didn't say anything. He simply pulled out a scroll from his pocket and handed it over to his nephew. Hinata was still sore after her fight, and her climb up the stairs to the waiting area was a slightly slow one. When she reached the waiting area, however, she was met with a large hug. Hinata-chan. Naruto chanted her name as he picked her up and swung her in circles. Congrats. The Hyuga heiress's face burned a bright red, and she put a conscious effort into not fainting in her crush's arm. Once she was able to accomplish that, she started to return the hug, and let a large smile cross her lips. Thank you, Naruto-kun. She told the Uzumaki as she laid her head on his shoulders. I heard you cheering for me during the fight. Of course you did. I was the loudest one here, Databao. He told her as he set the girl down on the ground. He then showed off a grin of his own on his face. You seriously kicked ass out there. Really, great job. Heh. The Hyuga heiress giggled slightly in response. Surprisingly, she wasn't feeling as sore as she was when she walked up the stairs. Instead, she was just happy to be with her crush. I'm glad. I worked hard for this match. And it showed. Karatsuchi and Shikamaru were both to the side, watching their two friends talk to each other. Both of them exchanged knowing glances. Hinata's confidence is at an all-time high right now. Shikamaru noted to the Iwa Kunoichi. She'll probably just up and confess once the whole exam is over. I give it a week longer tops. I give it even less time than that. I say she'll do it today and probably before the exams finish even. Karatsuchi told the Nara with a snicker. Father. Neji reread the scroll for the 6th time. After he had finished reading the scroll and learned that his father had chosen to die, not for the main family, but to save the life of his brother and to choose his own destiny, Hiashi bowed his head and begged for his forgiveness. Neji, in the moment, gave it to the man. The Hyuga head soon left the room, leaving the Hyuga prodigy alone, while he waited for the medics to come back and continue working on him. You were able to choose your own destiny in the end. Neji turned his attention away from the scroll and looked outside the window in the room. He noticed a few birds flying up into the sky to a nearby tree. I don't know. I don't know what I believe about anything. Fate, destiny, life. What anything means. I thought I knew everything and could see everything, but I learned today that I didn't see everything from my cousin, from the girl who I blamed your death on. Tears started to roll down Neji's eyes as he continued to watch the birds. I wish you were here, father. I wish you could see these birds fly. I wish you could have seen my fight with Hinata-sama. I wish you were so I could just talk to you. Father, I don't know exactly what there is to life right now. Everything I had ever believed in is now under question. But, maybe my fate is also undetermined. Maybe I can have it go in a new direction. A smile graced Neji's lips. Whatever the way it may be, I know that I will follow Hinata-sama's example. I will follow your example. If there is such a thing as fate, then I will choose my path. Neji continued to watch the birds fly as he waited for the medics to come back. For the first time in his life in years, a weight had been lifted from his shoulders, and he felt truly happy. After letting the two talk amongst each other for a moment, Shikamaru and Karatsuchi joined Hinata and Naruto and congratulated the Hyuga on a victory. A few more minutes of conversation passed by before Genma spoke up, interrupting their talk. It is now time for the next match. Will Sabaku no Gaara and Kankuro please come forward? He spoke up. Immediately after those words were spoken, Kankuro came forward on the balcony and shouted loudly for the proctor to hear. I forfeit. He exclaimed. The reaction was instantaneous. The crowd started booing and complaining. After 4 rather exciting matches, they were not excited to see someone up and quit. What the hell, man? You're quitting like that? Naruto called out to the Suna Genin. Yeah. I'm not fighting Gaara. No way in hell. Kankuro shouted back to the Uzumaki. You could at least try to fight him. It's a waste of a spot for you to be here then. Karatsuchi hissed at the puppeteer. Bite me. I could give a rat's ass. Kankuro snapped at her, rolling his eyes. Both Karatsuchi and Naruto glared at the Suna Genin but didn't say anything else. Nothing was going to change the puppeteer's mind, and it was already too late anyway. He had already announced his surrender. Realizing that same fact, Genma decided to raise his hand. The winner of the 5th match, by forfeit, Sabaku no Gaara. The audience started to boo loudly in response again. Once everything calmed down, Genma spoke up again. We will then begin with the next match immediately. Will Karatsuchi and Uzumaki Naruto please come forward? He announced. Chapter 27, A Showdown Between the Future Kage. Once Genma announced the next match, Naruto and Karatsuchi turned to face each other. Due to the excitement of the other matches, the two had forgotten about their upcoming match. Both of the Genin silently stared at each other intently for a few seconds. Well, it's about damn time. Karatsuchi broke the silence as she let a grin develop on her face. I was getting kinda sick just sitting up here, while everybody else gets their turn to kick some ass and fight. Heh, you as well. Naruto laughed lightly in response. Don't say you as well. You at least got to go against Risho earlier. I've had nothing so far. The IWA Shinobi whined. You two seem more battle-hungry than usual. Shikamaru noted with a chuckle. Hell yeah I am. Karatsuchi declared loudly. Naruto nodded excitedly, expressing his agreement. Both Shikamaru and Hinata laughed at their friend's excitement. The two of you should have a good fight. Give it your all, both of you. Hinata told them with a smile. Yeah, do your best and stuff. Shikamaru nodded in agreement. Of course. Naruto exclaimed to his teammates. Will do. Karatsuchi answered confidently. After saying goodbye, Naruto and Karatsuchi left the waiting room together. The two of them were moving fast, not making any effort to hide their excitement for their match. Once the two of them had left, Shikamaru and Hinata turned their attention to each other. Who do you think will win? Hinata asked the Nara curiously. Hard to say. Naruto's tough, yeah, but so is Karatsuchi. I don't think we got to see everything Naruto learned during the last month, but we also don't know what Karatsuchi can do. Shikamaru shrugged in response to Hinata's question. A smile then developed on his face. All I do know is that the two of them are going to give each other hell down there and probably give us all a show to remember. Hinata giggled in response to Shikamaru's answer. The two teammates then turned their attention downward to the battlefield as they waited for their friends to arrive and begin their match. The Hyuga was rooting for both Naruto and Karatsuchi to do well and look good to all of the people watching. She wanted to watch both of them do well and earn their promotions. However, she had to admit she had one person she was rooting for over the other. Naruto-kun, you can do it. She mentally wished her crush good luck. In their excitement for their match, Naruto and Karatsuchi rushed down the flights of stairs. After they got down to the ground floor, Karatsuchi stopped walking and turned her focus towards the Konoha genin. She then started to dig into her pockets and pulled out a small pill. Hey Naruto, take this. She called out to him. The blonde turned his attention back to Karatsuchi. He noticed the pill immediately and gave the girl a curious look. What is it? Naruto asked as he studied the pill. A soldier pill. Karatsuchi answered as she extended her hand further, urging Naruto to take it. I know your body and chakra levels are probably fine right now after your fight with Risho, but there's a chance you may still be a little tired or weakened from the fight, and I don't want that. I just want to make sure you're completely ready for the fight. He gave her a confused look. Wouldn't you rather me not be in my best condition to fight? That'd give you a better chance of winning. That'd give me a better chance to win, yeah, but that win wouldn't mean anything. Karatsuchi replied, shaking her head. We're all here to show what we are capable of as shinobi. I want to fight my opponents at their strongest. Anything less is not good enough. The kunoichi brought her hands together, slamming her left hand into her right palm. I want to see exactly I can do in a fight and see how I compare to the other shinobi here. So, I don't want you to not be in your best condition. I want you to come at me with everything you got. Naruto blinked in surprise for a second before he let out a laugh. The Uzumaki really respected Karatsuchi's logic and thought about the exams and testing herself. With that thought in mind, Naruto took the soldier pill and put it into his mouth. Like I told Shikamaru and Hinata-chan, I'm going to give it my all. Don't worry about that. He told his friend with a grin on his face. You're one of the people I've been most looking forward to fighting for a while, Karatsuchi, so I'm ready to see what you can do. I've been looking forward to fighting you for a while myself, Naruto. I've been interested in what you can do ever since the mission in Kusa no Kuni, and I finally get to see all you can do firsthand. Karatsuchi replied, matching his grin with one of her own. By the way, feel free to use as much chakra of the Kyuubi as you want. Trust me, you're going to need it. Oh? Naruto's eyebrows raised in response. We'll see if you can push me that far. 'Cause I plan on just simply kicking your ass with or without it. I'd like to see you try. She retaliated. The two continued to trash-talk each other as they walked the final steps towards the battlefield. Despite the nature of their words, the two had nothing but respect for each other. As a result, they were going to respect the other as a fighter, and fight as hard as they could. Somehow, their excitement for their match increased. The blonde. Uzumaki Naruto. I'm curious how he will handle this match. The Kazekage commented from the Hokage's sitting area. I'm curious myself. Hiruzen commented with a smile on his face. Naruto-kun really impressed me with his fight against Risho-san earlier, so I want to see what else he is capable of. Hated to break it to you two, but the blonde isn't going to do well this match. He's going to get his ass handed to him. Anoki spoke up. The Tsuchikage had a smirk on his face as he watched the two combatants enter the battlefield. My granddaughter is going to give him absolute hell down there. Oh yes, she is your granddaughter. The Kazekage noted in response. How confident are you in her? I already know she has more skill than the average Chunin. Maybe even more than that if she got better this month. Anoki answered proudly. This exam is just a formality for her to get her promotion. You speak very highly of her, Anoki. Hiruzen commented with a chuckle. The Sandaime Tsuchikage nodded in response. Although he would be the first person to comment about how Karatsuchi can be an annoying, stubborn brat, he also knew just how capable she was. He also knew that she was going to become a great shinobi in a few more years. Anoki was proud of his granddaughter, and he was excited to watch her fight and, in his mind, earn her promotion. Hiruzen continued to chuckle. As he looked at both Naruto and Karatsuchi in the battlefield, he recalled the circumstances of the Third Shinobi World War. Years later since the end, Konoha and Iwa Shinobi were now together again, ready to fight in a non-fatal battle. Seeing both Naruto and Karatsuchi together made the Hokage think that both the people of Iwa and Konoha were ready to put the war to the past and focus on the future. The Hokage also noticed a coincidence in the opponents and chuckled to himself. The granddaughter of the Sandaime Tsuchikage versus the son of the Yondaime Hokage. This match should be the most exciting one yet. The Sandaime Hokage gave the two genin his full attention as he was ready to see how the fight would go. Did Karatsuchi's training go well, Rashi-san? Roto questioned the Yonbi Jinchuriki. Of course it did. Rashi exclaimed in response. Gotta say though, Karatsuchi is a natural. She's amazing with the lava style, and she picks up on general lessons and theories faster than most shinobi I've ever worked with. She's going to be an absolutely lethal shinobi one of these days. I would agree with that. Han nodded in agreement. I must thank you for the assistance with her, Rashi. I knew you would be able to train her in her specialties more than I would be capable of. Hey, don't thank me. I'm glad to help out the next generation of shinobi whenever I can. The red-haired man laughed in response. Roto remained quiet as he watched Karatsuchi stand on the same battlefield that Risho had fought on. The genin was imagining himself standing there in her place against Naruto, or some random other shinobi. He was proud of his teammates for making it this far, and he was not upset that Hinata had beaten him in the preliminary exam. However, the civilian-born shinobi was starting to feel like he was not as skilled as his teammates. Both Risho and Karatsuchi came from prestigious families in Iwa and managed to make it this far, a task he was unable to do. Although Risho lost, he knew that he performed better than Roto would have if he made the finals and, according to how Rashi was talking about her, it sounded like Karatsuchi would do better as well. I'm not going to get too far behind. Roto shook his head in frustration. Do your best, Karatsuchi. Just know that I'm not going to far fall behind you or Risho any longer. Remember Naruto, give me your all or I'll kick your ass. Hard. Karatsuchi declared to the blonde as they faced each other on the battlefield. And again, I'd like to see you try. Naruto replied with a smirk. The two genin stopped conversation after their brief trash-talking and got into position to fight. Jinma realized that the two shinobi were ready to face each other and, as a result, raised his hand into the air. Let the final match of the first round, between Karatsuchi and Uzumaki Naruto, begin. The proctor exclaimed as he lowered his hand. Naruto and Karatsuchi responded immediately by jumping backwards and making hand signs. Shadow Clone Jutsu. Earth Style, Earth Clone Jutsu. 20 shadow clones of Naruto appeared directly in front of him in a poof of smoke. As his clones were formed, 5 clones of Karatsuchi were created as mud from the ground forged itself into her clones. Upon their creation, all sets of clones charged at each other, while the original versions of Naruto and Karatsuchi remained back. Naruto's clones outnumbered Karatsuchi's, but hers appeared to be stronger. The first clone of hers was punched by one of Naruto's clones, but instead of dispelling, it grabbed the clone's hand and pulled it closer to her and delivered a punch of her own. It dispelled immediately. The clone then joined the remaining clones of Karatsuchi's in the group of fight against Naruto's. Her clones were a lot more durable, being made from the ground, and took a lot more attacks before they were destroyed. A few seconds past the battle of the clones ended. All of Naruto's clones were destroyed by the stronger clones of Karatsuchi's. 2 of hers remained, still able to fight. Once they had finished attacking the clones, they proceeded to charge at the real Naruto. The Uzumaki quickly brought his hands together and made hand signs. Wind Style, Great Breakthrough. Naruto released a giant gust of wind from his mouth that collided with the clones. A second upon impact, the 2 Earth clones fell apart back to mud. Once her clones were destroyed, Karatsuchi proceeded to charge Naruto herself. By the time Naruto finished his jutsu, the kunoichi was already right in front of him. He was barely able to block a punch to the face. He retaliated by trying to punch the girl in her face, but she was able to block his attack as well. She responded by trying to do a sweeping kick and knock him to the ground, but Naruto jumped up and avoided the attack. He then continued to jump backwards and toss shuriken and kunai at the girl. Karatsuchi quickly pulled out a kunai of her own and used it to block the incoming weapons. She then immediately tossed her weapon at Naruto, who was able to roll out of the way of her kunai just in time. Fast reflexes. Naruto complimented with a smirk. That's what I should be saying to you. Karatsuchi returned his compliment with one of her own. She then started to make more hand signs as she charged him once again. But let's see just how fast they really are. Lava Style, Quicklime Jutsu. Karatsuchi breathed out the corrosive quicklime gas from her mouth. The gas floated through the air towards Naruto quickly. Naruto, in response, made hand signs of his own. Wind Style, Wind Release Stream. Naruto blew out a stream of wind from his mouth that collided with the approaching quicklime gas clouds. The wind's force was strong enough to halt the gas and reverse its direction, causing it to flow back towards Karatsuchi. The Iwa Kunoichi, in response, made another set of hand signs. Water Style, Water Trumpet. Karatsuchi released a jet of water from her mouth towards the approaching quicklime gas clouds. The water both created enough force to stop the wind that was propelling the gas forward and hardened the corrosive gas into a wet cement-like substance. This new substance flew in the air towards Naruto. His eyes widened and he jumped out of the way just in time. The gas made contact with the ground instead, causing it to harden further and dry. I'm not falling for the same tricks you used during the preliminary matches. Naruto informed Karatsuchi sharply. Good. I'd want to have more of a challenge. The Iwa Kunoichi replied with a smirk. Naruto responded to Karatsuchi's comment by pulling out another shuriken from his pocket. The Iwa Kunoichi immediately did the same, waiting for him to strike first. Well, like they said, they're going at it hard. Shikamaru commented with a chuckle. I don't think they have let up once since the fight started. They're incredible. Hinata commented in awe as she continued to watch her friends. The two of them had just tossed their shuriken at each other. Both weapons made contact with each other, effectively canceling each other out. They're good, I'll give them that. The two members of Team 3 turned their heads to see Sasuke approaching them. The Uchiha had kept mostly to himself during the matches as he watched the fights in one of the corners, but he finally felt like approaching someone to talk about the current match. Sasuke-san. Hinata greeted their fellow genin and former classmate. Shikamaru acknowledged him with a nod. Sasuke nodded back, returning their greeting and acknowledgement. He then started to speak again about the fight. What's really impressive is that neither one of them have made a single hit on each other. They're fighting carefully, yet intelligently. Yeah, I get the sense that they're just playing around and feeling each other's fighting style out. They're waiting for somebody to make the first mistake. Shikamaru noted. The question is though, which one will make that mistake? The Uchiha wondered aloud as he turned his attention to the fight again. Naruto. I always saw you as our class dope, and I can see you aren't now. You better win this. I want to see just what you're capable of for myself. The Uchiha told himself with a grin on his face. Damn. Han, Roshi, and Roto turned their attention away from the fight at the sound of a newcomer's voice. Walking towards their area in the stands was Risho. The Kurogane shinobi was walking slowly, but he eventually made his way and took a seat at the edge of the area. Risho, how are you doing? Han questioned immediately. The medics gave me the okay to leave the infirmary. I'm fine. I just need to take myself a little easily for the rest of the day. The Kurogane sighed in response. I see got out just in time to watch Naruto fight my teammate. Yeah. Roshi nodded. They're pretty even so far. It's actually an interesting fight. I've noticed. Risho sighed in response. Risho. About your clan - Han started to speak. Han-sensei, can we not talk about that now? The match is going on. Risho stated sharply. Han remained quiet for a few seconds before he nodded in understanding. Even though he was making more an effort, the IWA Jonin was still bad with human interaction and didn't really know how to approach truly comforting somebody. Therefore, if Risho wanted to not talk about it, he would not force the issue. He would wait until he wanted to say something. All he could hope for was that he'd be of actual help. The IWA swordsman had many thoughts running through his head based on his fight with Naruto and his view of Konoha. Naruto had beaten him soundly, but after the fight, the Uzumaki managed to compliment him. While he knew his cousin and the rest of his clan would be ashamed with his loss, Naruto saw him as an honorable fighter and even expressed an interest to fight him again one day. The same blonde who had defeated him was now fighting Karatsuchi. Risho had to admit that the girl was stronger than him and probably was the best shinobi IWA had in their generation, yet she and Naruto were even. What was more curious to the Kurogane was that, based on the expressions on their faces, the two of them were having fun. They were having a fierce fight, an IWA shinobi and a Konoha shinobi, but they were enjoying every second of it. For the first time in his life, Risho was seeing a fight between IWA and Konoha that seemed truly friendly. And, based on the reactions of the audience members around him, everyone seemed truly interested in it, not to root for the Konoha or IWA shinobi, but to simply see who won. Maybe there is hope for Konoha and IWA. Risho wondered to himself as he continued to watch the fight. He had many thoughts running through his mind, but he wasn't going to let them stop him from watching a fight that he was heavily interested in. Naruto and Karatsuchi continued throwing shuriken and kunai at each other, trying to land a hit on each from afar. Each weapon collided with the other, canceling their attacks. They were locked into a stalemate. Once again, both Naruto and Karatsuchi pulled out a shuriken and tossed at the other. This time, however, Karatsuchi made a series of hand signs. Shuriken Shadow Clone Jutsu. Immediately, 50 clones of the shuriken appeared next to the one Karatsuchi tossed. All 50 of them were flying in the air towards Naruto. The original shuriken Karatsuchi tossed made contact with Naruto's shuriken, canceling each other out, but the other 49 continued on their path towards the Uzumaki. What the fuck? That's a jutsu? I need to learn that. Naruto made a mental note to look up the jutsu. He then shook his head and scolded himself as he made a hand sign. But that's for later, Naruto. Gotta get out of the way. Naruto quickly disappeared right as the shuriken was about to make contact with him. He then appeared directly behind Karatsuchi, using the shunshin. A grin developed on his face as he attempted to deliver a kick at the IWA Kunoichi. His grin immediately faded from his face as she disappeared, just as he did, right as his kick was about to make contact. Wait, she can use the shunshin too. Naruto realized, his eyes widened. Shit, I should have dash. Naruto's train of thought was interrupted as he received a direct punch to his face. Karatsuchi had used the shunshin herself behind Naruto to land a hit on him the same way he did. The Uzumaki was hit with enough force that he was knocked into the ground hard. Karatsuchi responded by rushing up to him, making hand signs of her own. The IWA Kunoichi released another quicklime gas cloud from her mouth. She then proceeded to make more hand signs and released another jet of water from her mouth. The water, once again, combined with the gas and formed a cement-like substance that was flying towards Naruto, who was still getting up. I need to get out fast. Naruto realized as he made a quick set of hand signs. Earth style, headhunter jutsu. Naruto's body proceeded to sink into the earth. He was completely underneath the ground when the cement-like substance hit, causing it to harden and dry once again. The headhunter jutsu? Karatsuchi said the name of his jutsu with a frown, realizing he had saved himself. She proceeded to pay attention to the ground, waiting for Naruto to come out and preparing for whatever his next attack was going to be. A few seconds passed by, however, and Naruto was not coming out from the ground. The IWA Kunoichi was now starting to become impatient. I'm not going to wait forever, Naruto. She grumbled in response as she made hand signs. If you aren't going to come out and fight me face to face, then I'll just force you out. Just as Karatsuchi was about to finish her jutsu, the ground underneath her broke up and Naruto jumped out of the ground and tried to deliver a punch to her jaw. Karatsuchi's eyes widened as she jumped backwards, reacting just in time. She proceeded to reach forward, grabbing Naruto's jacket with her right hand and pulling him closer to her before he could jump away. She tightened her grip and brought her left hand into a fist. Thought you could sneak attack me, huh? Karatsuchi questioned with a grin. You were close, but not close enough. Despite the situation he was in, Naruto didn't outwardly respond to Karatsuchi's taunt. Instead, he simply smirked in response. Sure about that? The ground, once again, broke apart underneath the two. Another Naruto jumped out, attempting to punch Karatsuchi in the jaw. This time, the attack connected, knocking Karatsuchi upward and releasing the Naruto from her grasp. The Kunoichi coughed up blood slightly from the attack. The Naruto that had been freed proceeded to jump upwards and deliver a kick to Karatsuchi's stomach, knocking her back down to the ground hard face first. Once again, she coughed up blood, staining the ground slightly. Ah, fuck. Karatsuchi hissed in pain as she pulled herself upward quickly. She managed to stand up just in time to avoid attacks from the two Narutos. She delivered a kick to the stomach to one of them, causing it to disappear in a poof of smoke. Once it was just her and the original Naruto, she got back into position to fight. So, I take it when you went down underground with the headhunter jutsu, you made a shadow clone, knowing that I would only expect one attack from underneath the ground? The girl questioned him about his strategy. Yup, and it seemed to work. I got you to let your guard down for just a bit. He stated with a smirk. Ha. Ha. Ha 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 ha. Karatsuchi laughed cheerfully. I gotta say, Naruto, I haven't had this much fun in a while from a fight. This is exactly the type of match I was wanting to have. Naruto grinned in response and couldn't help himself but laugh as well. I feel the same way. You're really pushing me and keeping me on my toes. I gotta say, Karatsuchi, but I hope we get to have this fight again one day when we're both Kage. Hell yeah, we will. The IWA Kunoichi laughed in response. The laughter soon stopped and both shinobi entered stances again, ready to continue with their fight. They then immediately charged each other. Oh? Oh? Your granddaughter wishes to replace you, Anoki? Hiruzen questioned the Sandaime Tsuchikage with a light chuckle. She does, yeah. Anoki sighed in response. She probably has the raw talent to do so. She's got great chakra reserves, good variation in ninjutsu, a tactical mind in battle, and a real love and dedication to IWA. However, she's also rather naive when it comes to how the world works. She's too much of an idealist in my mind to be an effective leader. She's still young and needs to mature more before I can say for certain that she will become Tsuchikage. I can't say I know her well, but I'm starting to think that maybe she will accomplish that goal. Hiruzen spoke up with a sincere smile. I can't speak about her goals, but she seems to have a good heart and a sense of pride that I think any shinobi would be lucky to serve under. She'll make a great successor one day. Humph. Anoki grumbled to himself. He partially agreed with his fellow Kage, but he didn't like really imagining Karatsuchi as his successor. He wasn't ready to hand over his hat just yet, and Karatsuchi, in his mind, really needed to grow up before he would ever truly consider letting her replace him. However, in the back of his head, he knew he might be too hard on her. Still, he wasn't going to think of the issue for too long. He had, at least, another 10 or 15 years left in his mind, and he wasn't going to bother worrying about a successor. In contrast to Anoki, Hiruzen was looking at the two as definite successors to them. He didn't know if Naruto or Karatsuchi would be the immediate successors, but he knew that at some point, the two of them would be seen as Hokage and Tsuchikage respectively. And from what he was observing of their interaction, it seemed as if they would be able to do what he had been trying to do these past few years and fully restore relations between IWA and Konoha. These two are what their generation needs. Hiruzen smiled as he continued to watch them fight. Naruto and Karatsuchi continued their fight with taijutsu. Naruto blocked a punch from Karatsuchi to his stomach, and then jumped up to avoid a sweeping kick. He tried to kick her from above, but she managed to grab his foot. Immediately, he made the hand sign for the shunshin and disappeared just as Karatsuchi was about to punch him. Naruto appeared right behind the girl and attempted to punch her. The IWA Kunoichi managed to turn around just in time and catch his fist with her right palm, stopping him from making contact with her. She then moved to punch him with her left hand as Naruto proceeded to use his free hand to punch her. The two attacks hit, causing both Naruto and Karatsuchi to get knocked back further. They, however, caught themselves before falling to the ground. Both genin were breathing hard and starting to really feel the exhaustion. Both Naruto and Karatsuchi were also starting to bruise, and they both were starting to also bleed on their face. Despite their conditions, the two of them were grinning at each other. Looking pretty tired, Naruto. Had enough yet? Karatsuchi asked between some heavy breathing. Or do I still need to give you more of a pounding? I can go on for days. It's you who might want to call it quits. You're looking pretty exhausted yourself. Naruto informed between his own breaths. I'm not quitting until either you lose or the proctor forces the match to end. The IWA Kunoichi replied as she started to make hand signs rapidly. Likewise. The Uzumaki exclaimed his agreement. Naruto had been paying attention to the hand signs Karatsuchi had made for her other jutsus in order to recall what signs went with what techniques, so he could predict her next attacks. This time, however, he couldn't predict what she was doing. She was going to use another new style of attacks. Therefore, he got into a defensive position, preparing for whatever jutsu Karatsuchi was going to unleash at him. Lava style, scorching rocks jutsu. Karatsuchi opened her mouth and released large balls of lava from her mouth. They hardened into molten rock before being sent flying toward Naruto. Holy shit! The Uzumaki cursed as he jumped out of the way just in time. The lava made contact with the ground, lighting the area on fire. He then turned to the Iwa Kunoichi in surprise. "Are you trying to kill me or something?" "They won't kill you." She shook her head as she made more hand signs. She was making an effort to not use the jutsu as lethally as it usually would be. "However, they're going to win me this match, Naruto." "So, this is what you're working on with Hiroshi?" Han noted as he noticed Karatsuchi's jutsu. "Yup." The Yanbi Jinchuriki nodded. "If the kid's gonna work with lava-style ninjutsu, then she needs to stop working with that corrosive gas all of the time and start practicing on some real lava techniques." "Is Karatsuchi really sure that her techniques aren't going to kill Naruto?" Roto asked with a slightly pale face. "Because that shit looks like it'd melt his face off." "Nah, it won't kill him. I trust Karatsuchi knows what she's doing. She knows the limits with the jutsu and what is lethal and what is just painful. Besides, she'll probably douse the poor boy with water before anything truly burns him." Rashi answered with a hearty laugh. "However, if that was an enemy that she had to fight to the death, I'm assuming she'd roast the poor guy before he or she knew what was happening." Roto's face paled even further at how much destructive capabilities Karatsuchi's lava-style ninjutsu had. In contrast, Risho, who had been quiet for most of the entire match, seemed further interested with the fight. "She'd melt through my armor." The Kurigane realized. "So, how are you going to get your way out of this mess, Naruto?" "Hinata, calm down. You know Karatsuchi wouldn't try and kill Naruto. And you know that if it turned life-threatening, the proctor would step in anyway. Everything's fine." Shikamaru told his teammate. Hinata nodded in understanding. The girl had started to sweat nervously for her teammate's life at the sight of the lava, but she knew, in the back of her mind, that Karatsuchi wouldn't kill her friend. Disregarding the fact that they were friends, the Iwa Kunoichi wasn't the type of person to even consider something like that. "Naruto-kun." She mumbled her crush's name. While she was not nervous for his life, she was nervous for his chances in the match now. "Be careful. You can still win this." Literal lava-style ninjutsu, huh?" Sasuke was now staring at Karatsuchi with even more interest. "I'll want to look into this." The Uchiha clan, when they were alive, had a policy of not using the Sharingan outside of combat to copy other people's ninjutsu. While not every shinobi followed this code of conduct, and even Sasuke's father was somebody who broke this policy, it was still strongly discouraged as it was considered dishonorable to copy the techniques of somebody who wasn't a threat or enemy. Sasuke, to honor his clan, remembered this oath and resisted the urge to activate his Sharingan. However, in the back of his head, he was starting to hope Karatsuchi won. "Whether it's today or some other day, I'll look forward to fighting against you one day, Karatsuchi-san," Sasuke told himself as he continued to watch the match. Lava style, scorching rocks jutsu. Karatsuchi continued to unleash balls of hardened molten lava at Naruto. The Uzumaki was running around frantically, trying to avoid each attack. Each lava rock would get closer to hitting him, and would get the ground caught on fire. Finally, one of the lava rocks managed to make contact with Naruto's left leg. He hissed in pain as he cut off the part of his pants that were on fire as fast as he could. He managed to remove the part of his clothing fast enough to avoid getting heavily burnt, but the now exposed part of his leg was indeed burnt and was not in its best condition. Naruto still winced in pain. It was then that Naruto also realized what Karatsuchi had done. With each use of her jutsu, Karatsuchi had caught different areas of the ground on fire. All these areas were now connecting and formed a circle that surrounded the Uzumaki. She had trapped him in the center. And, thanks to Naruto's injured leg, he wouldn't be able to jump high enough to get out of the center. Damn it. He cursed. And that's game. Karatsuchi smirked in response. The girl's face was red from using her jutsu multiple times, and she was sweating profusely. She was also breathing heavily. Despite her utter exhaustion, the girl was excited. She had managed to trap Naruto and, in her mind, was about to win. Not yet, it's not. No way in hell. Naruto shook his head, denying Karatsuchi's claim. I'm not finished yet. Then show me what else you have left. Karatsuchi informed as she made another set of hand signs. I'll just force him down with my quicklime jutsu and water trumpet combination. That way he won't get too much more injured than he already is. She thought to herself. Karatsuchi quickly performed both of her jutsus in succession, creating the cement-like substance. She launched her attack towards Naruto. The substance managed to pierce the flames and headed straight for the Uzumaki to pin him down on the ground. As planned, it collided directly with Naruto. Unlike Karatsuchi's plan, however, Naruto dispelled. What? Karatsuchi's eyes were wide in surprise. She then scanned the entire battlefield, looking for the blonde. No fucking way. That couldn't have been a shadow clone. How did it not dispel from the burn then? No, he must have substituted with a clone or something. When the hell did he have time to make one? A realization then crossed Karatsuchi's face. Wait, then where's the original Naruto? As soon as Karatsuchi reached her realization, the ground under, once again, broke apart. Naruto jumped up and managed to grab the kunoichi by her arms and legs, making her unable to move. The girl's eyes were wide. How? Did you get underground? How did you replace yourself with a shadow clone? Karatsuchi asked in surprise. Simple. Naruto responded with a smirk. As he spoke, 4 more clones jumped up from under the ground. When I went under the ground the last time, and made that one shadow clone to sneak attack you with, I made a few more down there that I didn't have come up. You made extras? Karatsuchi's eyes somehow grew wider. How did I not think about that? I thought they would have all attacked me if he made more. Damn it, I fucked up. Yeah. I wanted them under the ground though, in case I needed to substitute with them. I could have maybe attacked you with them earlier, but I thought it was better for me to be safe and leave them down there in case I needed to use the substation jutsu. Naruto explained. I think it is game now. No, it's not. Karatsuchi replied as she struggled to get out Naruto's grasp. You didn't surrender when I had you trapped, so I'm not doing the same. The IWA kunoichi continued to struggle to get out of his group, but her attempts were failures. Naruto realized that she wasn't going to stop until she was unable to stop fighting. Therefore, he had to end this match the hard way. I got an idea. This should end it. The Uzumaki thought. Naruto quickly released his grip on Karatsuchi and pushed her forward. 3 of Naruto's clones immediately rushed forward and proceeded to kick the girl upward before she could move away. Nah. Are you dash? 2. Since the original Naruto still had a burn on his leg, the final clone of Naruto immediately rushed forward and jumped on the original's shoulders. It used his shoulders as a stepping stone to help him jump even higher, above Karatsuchi. The clone then proceeded to kick the girl in the face, knocking her downward into the ground. Uzumaki barrage. Upon impact, Karatsuchi proceeded to cough up even more blood onto the ground. She tried to pull herself up off the ground, but her attempts failed. The girl had barely any control of her body. Something's broken. No, scratch that, a ton of things are broken. Karatsuchi realized as she closed her eyes, wincing from the pain. Damn, I was so close. Jinma rushed over to check up on the condition of the girl from IWA. He quickly came to the same conclusion and realized that there was no way she was going to be able to continue fighting. As a result, he raised his hand and pointed towards Naruto. Winner, Uzumaki Naruto, he declared. The applause was instantaneous and louder than it had been all day. Naruto Kun. Hinata nearly screamed after Naruto's victory was announced. Shikamaru immediately grabbed his ears and winced. Holy shit, what happened to the quiet Hinata I used to know? The Hyuga blushed in response, but quickly turned her attention to her teammate and smiled. Sorry, but how could I not be excited? Naruto-kun won and did amazing. He was amazing. And so was Karatsuchi. The girl's smile turned into a slight grin. There's no way they both don't get promoted after that. Shikamaru nodded in understanding. Yeah, there's no way they don't. A smirk then developed on his face. They definitely kicked ass out there. I'll be stunned if they aren't promoted. Good job, Naruto. Shikamaru thought as he looked at his blonde teammate, who was still in the battlefield. He then turned his attention towards the Iwa Kunoichi, who was still lying on the ground as Medical approached her. Good job out there, Karatsuchi. How is he the Naruto from the academy? Sasuke told himself as he recalled the events of Naruto's last fight. A few seconds passed before a grin developed on Sasuke's face. You really have gotten stronger, Naruto. You'll be the perfect test to see where I stand right now. Motherfucking hell yes. Anko breathed out in relief. The Tokubetsu Jonin had been surprisingly quiet as she watched the match. She was just that heavily interested in a fight that seemed so evenly matched. Once the fight was over though, and Naruto was declared a winner, she was finally able to be as expressive and loud as she felt. He won. He fucking won again. And kicked some major ass. She screamed. I mean, holy shit. Anko, this may or may not be the last time we associate with each outside of the TNI department. Ibiki grumbled, feeling annoyed and embarrassed by Anko's behavior. I'm sorry, but come on. Don't you feel excited after watching something like that? That was intense as fuck. She screamed excitedly. Naruto, your promotion is in the bag now. You too, Karatsuchi. Don't be too hard on her, Ibiki. She's excited and getting even more excited with each match. Her students have all performed well. Kurenai informed her co-proctor. Aren't you proud of Naruto as well? 'Cause I certainly am at least. No, I am. Ibiki admitted. He let a small smirk develop on his face. The kid's tactics are phenomenal now. He'll make a great chunin, and I have no doubt he'll move up the ranks again rather soon. I can't believe it. Karatsuchi lost. Rashi mumbled with a frown. Damn. Wish I got here sooner so I could have trained with her more. There's nothing to be ashamed of, Rashi. Han told his friend. The Gobi Jinchuriki looked downward at the two fighters proudly. She fought well, Rashi. They fought well. They surpassed my expectations. She did, yeah. The Yanbi Jinchuriki sighed. He then looked over at the match. No, she did really well overall. And so did Naruto. I'm still looking forward to meeting him, you know? We'll introduce you two soon. You'll enjoy each other's company, I believe. Han chuckled. Han then turned his attention to the battleground and let a smile cross his lips underneath his mask. Excellent work, you two. Simply excellent. Naruto won. Roto realized. The Iwa Genin knew Naruto was a Jinchuriki, a concept that actually intimidated him slightly. Still, Roto knew that Naruto was not from a shinobi clan. In his mind, that made Naruto a civilian like him. The civilian-born Iwa Genin looked at Naruto with a light in his eyes. If you can get to where you got without the help of a clan, then so can I. I'll reach your level and Karatsuchi's level. Just watch. Unlike the other Iwa shinobi, Risha was paying attention to something other than the match. He was listening to the crowds of other people around him. That was a close match. Intense as hell. Can't believe that brat managed to pull that off. He's better than I thought he'd be. He's better than I think anybody thought. Still, that girl from IWA managed to do great. Honestly, she's a real kunoichi. Somebody I'd love to have on my team. She's a real strategist, just like Naruto. They both earn my respect. Each random person Risho listened to, he heard more and more praise given to Naruto and Karatsuchi and their fight. The Kurigane realized that the people of Konoha were putting aside their feelings for IWA and respecting Karatsuchi. They were starting to respect an actual IWA shinobi, despite the war. If they can put the war to the past, then maybe I should too. Naruto's right. Risho told himself as he let a smile grace his lips. He then proceeded to clap with the other people in the audience. Good job, Karatsuchi. Good job, Naruto. After a few seconds had passed since he was announced the winner, Naruto walked over to Karatsuchi slowly. His leg was still burnt and his whole body was sore. He couldn't really move that fast. Nevertheless, he didn't let it stop him and reached the IWA kunoichi just about the same time as the medical shinobi. Hey, Karatsuchi. He called out to the girl. Karatsuchi looked at the blonde and smirked at him. Hey, how are you doing? I don't know about you, but I feel like absolute shit. Can't really move anything in my body. I'm not that bad enough, but I've definitely been better. The Uzumaki responded with a slight chuckle. I'd hope. I'd be pissed if I was like this, and you were all perfectly fine and stuff. The IWA kunoichi commented with a slight eye roll. No, that's not the case. That was the hardest I've ever worked in a fight. You really pushed me hard during the match. Naruto complimented his friend. He gave her a small thumbs up. One of these days, you're going to be the best Sachikage IWA has ever had. Karatsuchi's eyes widened at the compliment. She opened her mouth to respond to it, but she couldn't form the proper words. She only regained her ability to speak once the medical shinobi put her on a stretcher, and she was about to get escorted off the battlefield. I'll do what I can to be the best, she told him with a smile. And you're going to be the best damn Hokage Konoha will ever get. Congrats on the victory, Naruto. With those words, Karatsuchi was escorted out of the battlefield, towards the infirmary. Naruto proceeded to walk off, having never felt prouder in his entire life after that match. Your granddaughter truly is impressive, Anoki. Hiruzen complimented the Tsuchikage on Karatsuchi's performance. Anoki shrugged in response. The exam was really a formality for her. Karatsuchi is good enough to be Chunin, and I always knew that. Her match just proved that point. A smirk then developed on his face. She did put on a good fight though. I'm impressed with her. And the Uzumaki kid. I would agree with that. Naruto was indeed impressive. The Kazekage added his thoughts. Hiruzen smiled as he thought about the match and the display of tactics and techniques Naruto could use. You're on your way to becoming Hokage, Naruto-kun. The Hokage told himself as he imagined the shinobi Naruto would become in the future. Anoki and Hiruzen continued to discuss about the match and their own shinobi. The Kazekage listened in with feigned interest. Underneath his mask, the man had a sinister grin on his face as he slowly turned his attention towards the battlefield once again. My, what interesting shinobi we have here today. It's a shame that most, if not all, will have their bright futures taken away from them. He noted to himself. It's almost time. Gaara's match will be starting soon. And once it does, the plan will finally begin. That's it for this reading. Hit like and subscribe for a free ticket pass going to the different worlds of anime fanfictions. Looking forward to having you on board again.